Good day and welcome. This is a reminder before we begin that there is interpretation for the event. You can see the American Sign Language on your screen, or you can connect to the relevant interpretation channel. We have them in Spanish, French, and English by using the icon of a globe, the picture of a globe at the bottom of your screen. So again, a really warm welcome to this special ICPD plus 30 Faith Associated event. We titled it From Many One, ICPD Achievements, Build Bridges, and Shape the Future for Gender Justice. A lot of thought went into that name, and we hope to deliver for you and have you join in with this reflection time together today. I'm Casey Harden. I'm the 15th General Secretary of World YWCA, where we're driving the realization of our goal that 100 million young women and girls will transform power structures, creating justice, gender equality, and a world without violence and war, leading to a sustainable YWCA movement of leaders, inclusive of all women by 2035. We're almost 10 years into that work, and we have 10 years left. And again, we invite you to join us on that with that work. We're collaborating World YWCA in this event as a member of the Multi-Faith Advisory Council, and we're co-hosting this event with UNFPA, one of our strongest UN partners. We're marking the 30th anniversary of the adoption of the International Conference on Population and Development Program of Action. It was a remarkable, and still is, global consensus placing individual dignity and human rights, including the right to plan one's family, at the heart of all development. Before we move into formal introductions, we are asking you to join us to affirm that this co-convened place be a place where we show empathy, respect for one another, and listen and avoid assumptions. That we affirm the diversity of languages, opinions, and expertise, and we're committed to this being a space of shared learning. Lastly, that we agree we have zero tolerance of harassment or discrimination of any kind. So thanks again for giving up your precious time and participating fully and actively in this event. I'm going to hand over to my co-moderator, Rabbi Diana Gerson, who will introduce herself and share about the importance of this event in greater detail. Thanks.
What a joy to be here, gathered together as a faith community with partners and friends to affirm and celebrate the ICPD Program of Action. My name is Rabbi Diana Gerson, and I am the Associate Executive Vice President of the New York Board of Rabbis, the NYBR. I represent the organization at the United Nations, and I lead efforts to unite religious leaders across faiths to improve children's welfare. 2024 marks the 30th anniversary of the adoption of the International Conference on Population and Development, ICPD, Program of Action, a remarkable global consensus that placed individual dignity and human rights, including the right to plan one's family, at the heart of development. So why are we celebrating this agenda as faith actors? Over 84% of people worldwide recognize themselves in a religious tradition, which opens up avenues for collaborations that strive for protection and dignity in the area of population and development. Religion shapes values and attitudes and influences behaviors, and faith actors are therefore powerful allies in promoting transformative social norms, affirming human rights, and countering harmful practices. This event aims to celebrate the positive role that faith actors have played in implementing the ICPD Program of Action and showcase some of the best practices of faith actors and faith-based methodologies, which we're going to hear about in session 1. In session 2, we're going to learn more about how we promote open dialogue and understanding beyond the usual circles and build bridges on issues that we have been perceived as dividing communities. We're going to also capture the views and recommendations of faith actors vis-a-vis the future of the ICPD agenda, which we'll focus on in session 3. All the contributions from today's event will contribute to the global ICPD 30 review report. We are so grateful to Rebecca Reed, who is listening to today's event and capturing some of the key points to contribute to the report. It's an ambitious program, so let's begin. Our first speaker this morning or this afternoon or this evening, depending on where you are, is going to provide opening remarks, and it's Julia Bunting, who currently serves as UNFPA's Director of both the Technical Division and Policy and Strategy Division until August 1st, 2024, when she will serve as Director of the Integrated UNFPA Program Division. As President and CEO of the Population Council from 2015 to 2023, Julia spearheaded the development and implementation of a transformative strategic plan, significantly strengthening resource mobilization efforts, bringing in new funders, and enhanced focus on research utilization and impact.
Thank you, Diana. Excellencies, colleagues, friends, it is an honor to open this day of celebration and reflection on the 30th anniversary of the International Conference on Population and Development, on the special theme, From Many to One, multi-faith actors celebrate ICPD achievements, build bridges, and shape the future for gender justice. This event is an opportunity to capture, elevate, and share the views of the faith community on this important agenda. Let me thank UN Women, the Multi-Faith Advisory Council, and the group of 13 faith-based organizations that worked with passion and commitment to make this event possible. 30 years ago, we set out to achieve a world in which people would live longer, healthier lives and enjoy more rights and choices than ever before. Since then, the ICPD Programme of Action has continued to place gender equality, the empowerment of women and girls, and universal access to sexual and reproductive health at the heart of sustainable development. But fully realizing this will not be possible without bodily autonomy. When each person has bodily autonomy, rights and opportunities, the possibilities for all 8 billion people on this planet are infinite. While this vision has become a reality for many, fewer women are dying giving birth, more girls are in school, and investments in sexual and reproductive health and rights have increased fivefold, we know that the promise of Cairo is still out of reach for millions of women and girls. We need to move faster, and we need to include everyone. While progress has accelerated for the easiest to reach, we've neglected to confront the inequalities and disparities within our systems and societies that have left too many behind. These inequalities are based on gender, economic status, ethnicity, sexual orientation, disability, and many more areas. Progress has been slowed by the climate crisis and by conflicts that are swelling in number and scale and impact. For the first time in decades, development goals and gains have unraveled, eroding hard-won advances and threatening the health, well-being and safety of women, girls and other marginalized people. Allow me to share just a few alarming statistics. Every day, around 800 women die from preventable causes related to pregnancy and childbirth. This equates to over 290,000 women dying every year. To put it another way, every 2 minutes, a woman dies while giving life. Violence against women affects nearly 1 in 3 women worldwide. And just 55% of women report having the ability to make their own decisions about their sexual and reproductive health. We still have much work ahead to make the vision of the Cairo ICPD real for all women, girls and young people in all their diversities. In April, with the governments of Benin, Denmark and the Netherlands, UNFPA brought together over 500 young leaders from 130 countries in Cotonou for the Global Youth Dialogue on ICPD 30. There, young people defined their vision for the next phase of the ICPD Programme of Action. They're calling for urgent action to realise their right to bodily autonomy, their right to education, their right to decent work, and their right to live in peaceful societies. They want more power in decision-making and a greater voice in critical global conversations. In May, at the Global Dialogue on Demographic Diversity and Sustainable Development in Dhaka, Bangladesh, UNFPA and partners discussed gender equality and sexual reproductive health and rights, technology, population data, intergenerational well-being, healthy aging, and the impact of climate change. In a world where 2/3 of people now live in places with below replacement fertility, while some countries continue to experience rapid population growth, the importance of the ICPD Programme of Action for a shared future of peace and prosperity was reaffirmed. And tomorrow in New York, the third and final ICPD 30 Global Dialogue will explore how to harness the power of technology for advancing women's health, rights and choices. At UNFPA, we recognise and value the role of faith-based actors as partners in the journey of making the ICPD vision a reality. Your mission to focus and prioritise the most vulnerable and disadvantaged communities, those left behind, aligns with ours. You bear witness and give voice to those left behind by their governments, by their neighbours, by their families, and in doing so, you hold authorities accountable. Religion shapes values and attitudes and influences behaviours. As faith actors, you are therefore powerful allies in promoting positive behaviours and countering negative and harmful practices. At the local level, you play a critical role in making the link with local communities and translating the ICPD language into one that is meaningful to the community context. And in many communities, you are the key providers of basic health and educational services, including in humanitarian settings. So you can, and in many countries do, provide quality sexual and reproductive health services and education. It is paramount to create safe spaces for collaboration and sharing all perspectives, like this conversation will provide today. While key intergovernmental moments, like the Commission on the Status of Women and the Commission on Population and Development, represent the cornerstones of our collaboration at the global level, there is a need for these conversations to continue beyond these key moments. It has to be a long-term investment. Today's event is a key step in that direction. Today, we will celebrate the positive role that faith actors have played in implementing the ICPD Programme of Action. We will promote open dialogue and understanding beyond the usual circles of UNFPA partners, and we'll capture the views and recommendations of faith actors vis-à-vis the future of the ICPD agenda. The results of these discussions, as Casey said, will be captured in the ICPD Global Review Report, and which will compile key messages and recommendations from all the ICPD initiatives at national, regional and global level to help inform discussions ahead of the Summit of the Future in September. This is our opportunity to showcase, highlight and make the voices of faith communities heard. So I look forward to hearing what promises to be a very compelling conversation in these panels. Let's build on the groundbreaking vision set forth at the International Conference on Population and Development and make the right choices today for a better, fairer and more just tomorrow for everyone, everywhere. Our collective future depends on it. Thank you.
We now welcome our second speaker, representing the faith constituencies. Aliyah Muhammad is a member of the Council of Religions in Mauritius and has been elected to represent Mauritius in the African Women of Faith Network for Religions for Peace. Aliyah.
Thank you very much. So, distinguished guests, esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. It is with indeed an immense pleasure to be part of this event, and I thank the UNFPA for the kind invitation. So I'd like to start with giving background information on the ICPD. Today's event is indeed very special, as we're celebrating the 30th year of mandate of the ICPD. We're celebrating not only the anniversary or years of existence, but most importantly, we're delving into the pathway, the journey and mission of the UNFPA through the protocols established under the Plan of Action. For today's event, it would be wise to put into perspective the realization of the strategic objectives of the Plan of Action, which has geared the Sustainable Development Goals across the globe. As we mark the 30th anniversary of the International Conference on Population and Development, this event will surely cast a light on the milestones reached through the concrete achievements of the UNFPA since the landmark conference held in Cairo in the year 1994. The 1994 conference occurred at a defining moment in the history of international cooperation, which has explored the different avenues to redress, I would say, major global issues hampering the sustainable development of countries across the globe. So during the ICPD, a plan of action was adopted in the 1994. The ICPD has given clear mandate to ensure that the dignity of mankind is respected and that human rights are given equal protection in all jurisdictions. So the key aspect of the plan of action is to recognize the threats which are severely impacting the well-being of the future generations. So at the heart of the ICPD resides the inherent value of sustainable development, which add on the SDGs in all key areas of our global village, impacting our global village. The efficient use of natural resources is one of the major key concerns of the ICPD, which has addressed multiple challenges which the world is currently facing. I would like to cite certain examples: integrating population development strategies, gender equality, equity, empowerment of women, family, its role, rights, composition and structure, population growth and structure, reproductive rights and reproductive health, health morbidity and mortality, international migration, amongst others, population development and education. Whilst the ICPD plan of action is holistic in approach by considering at all levels of development, including social, economic, political, environmental concern, which are indeed well embedded within the Sustainable Development Goals. So ladies and gentlemen, that was a little bit about the background information. But to bear in mind that the plan of action, which we're talking about the 2030 agenda, has given much substance to the purpose of the ICPD. And until now, it remains, I would say, undeniable truth that the multifaceted agenda requires a concerted and collaborated approach with different stakeholders, both at international and national levels. There is need for a dynamic interplay between both local and international actors, including faith-based organizations, which spring from the civil society, which has much also to offer in terms of implementation of activities within the specific framework as designed by the ICPD plan of action. So in furtherance to that plan of action, the 15 cardinal principles which inform its existence still find its relevance even after 30 years after its launching in the year 1994. The world has undergone a remarkable demographic, social, economic, environmental, and political change since the past decades. But the principles enshrined in the plan of action or the agenda have not expired and remain key to the realization of the strategic goals of the UNFPA. For today's event, focus is laid on gender justice and how to shape the future of gender equality across the globe. I would like to highlight that whilst the ICPD and its plan of action provides indeed a framework to achieve the SDGs, but its realization concretely requires a concerted effort amongst the key stakeholders, including faith-based organizations. Achieving the goals of the ICPD is challenging, but not impossible. But there should be a constant effort to work towards its realization into practice. The plan of action holds 3 levels of intervention, namely the macro level, international level, the meso level, and the micro level, whereby programmatic interventions ought to be informed by its core 15 principles. That plan of action also requires, I would say, in bold, a system thinking approach at national level, which needs to be adopted by governments so that global issues are assessed from an ecosystem perspective. The holistic approach leverages the policy framework and ensures that government of states are working with strategic partners, including faith leaders or faith-based organizations. Faith actors, indeed, I would say, play an important or crucial role in determining social norms and beliefs within a society. Religion is a soft power that can shape social norms, beliefs, and practices either positively or negatively. Hence, it is imperative that the agenda of the ICPD be cascaded down by using a bottom-to-top approach. Faith leaders, with a crucial intervention at the meso and micro level, play an important role as they have the aptitude to tackle societal issues, I would say, at grassroots level. So as we are gathered here today, ladies and gentlemen, to celebrate the achievements, the 30 decades of existence of the ICPD, which have received landmark consensus from the government, but it would be judicious to consider the following major steps as statement towards ensuring the sustainability of the ICPD agenda in the coming years. First, we need to ensure there is a shared understanding of the agenda with the different stakeholders in society. We need to cascade down the national policy considerations by including faith-based organizations in the national action plan or strategic framework as key lead actors or agency. We need to bring programmatic interventions which will ensure that there is indeed an integrated approach in activities geared towards the realization of the key goals of the ICPD. There is need as well to take a whole society approach which highlights inclusivity and no one is left behind in the process of implementation. So whilst we cannot predict the future, but we have the freedom to create a better future for the future generations to come, where sustainability prevails and human dignity is at the apex. So the ICPD's future lies in the hands of all stakeholders, including civil society network, where faith leaders hold an important function at grassroots players. Let us hope that the concrete realization of the ICPD agenda be impactful, both qualitatively and quantitatively. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your kind attention, and I hope that you will enjoy this session ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Julia and Alia for setting the scene. Wow, and the importance of our ongoing work to implement the ICPD program of action.
Thanks so much to everyone, including the interpreters, for really setting the stage for our time today. It's with pleasure that I introduce the moderator of our first session, Ivy Koick, who is a representative to the UN for Soka Gakkai International and also focal point for gender equality and women's empowerment. She's also the co-chair of the NGO Committee on the Status of Women in New York, and she'll introduce our first session. Ivy, thanks so much. It's always a pleasure to work closely with you as we explore faith and feminism and gender equality and all of the really key subjects that Julia and Aaliyah just brought to our attention.
Thank you so much, Casey, and welcome everyone to our first session where we are celebrating. One moment, I have to move my screen to look at the, one moment, sorry. Technical challenge here. Oh. Okay, here it is. So we are celebrating the ICPD achievements and reflections on the journey. So this is a reflective portion of today's agenda. And so the program of action of a landmark conference, which was the ICPD, was held in 1994 in Cairo. The plan was adopted by 179 governments. Chapter 4 on gender equality, equity, and empowerment of women starts with these statements, and I'm quoting, "The empowerment and autonomy of women and the improvement of their social, political, social, economic, and health status is a highly important end in itself. In addition, it's essential for the achievement of sustainable development. Now, when I reflect, that was 30 years ago, and how very relevant, even more relevant it is now today, and that tie to sustainable development, I thought was very important. And personally, as I'm immersed in the annual commission on the status of women, or CSW, I would like to acknowledge a linkage with this and the ICPD. Actually, a year after Cairo, the Fourth World Conference on Women took place in China, and the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action was adopted. And this is seen still as the most progressive blueprint for advancing women's rights, and I would say women's and girls' rights. Among advocates, feminists, and women's rights activists, it's clear that Cairo paved the way, or maybe it's clear to me, I can say for sure, that the success in Beijing really hinged on what happened there. In fact, each of the World Conferences on Women, starting in 1975, the World Population Conferences in 1974 in Bucharest, 1984 in Mexico City, this all started a global movement. And I'm not even going to touch all the other significant conferences that the UN had at that time. Among this, civil society was key, and I would like to stress faith communities. They have been a part of this movement to advance gender justice and the rights of women and girls. And so I'm so honored to be moderating a panel that will be sharing the contributions that have been made by faith actors, which I feel is important to spotlight. So for the next about 50 minutes, we'll be hearing from 3 panelists and a respondent. I'd like to first turn to our first panelist, Peter Munene. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Faith to Action Network. It's a global interfaith network of more than 100 Baha'i, Buddhist, Christian, Confucian, Hindu, and Muslim faith organizations represented in 26 countries. He has 22 years experience in advocacy and implementation of programs targeting marginalized groups. So Peter, you've been working for decades as a person of faith for SRHR. What were some of the significant steps taken by faith actors in the earlier years of the ICPD program of action?
Thank you very much, Ivy. And it's a pleasure really to be together with all of us here in this platform. As you've mentioned, Faith to Action Network is a global interfaith network. And we are interfaith in nature, spread in different countries, because we are membership based as well. And we have members in Africa, Asia, Europe, and the US. And responding to the question we have asked, we understand fully that ICPD addresses some of the issues that in some faith communities, there's no consensus. And therefore, from the point go of ICPD, the faith community has supported ICPD itself and its plan of action in multiple ways. After the Cairo conference in 1994, the faith community held various forums to clarify against various rumors and allegations of conspiracies that was spreading within the communities and within, of course, the faith community as well. And one rumor was that ICPD was being forced on developing countries, and it was a conspiracy of ICPD, and its plan of action was a plot against the West, by the West, sorry, to reduce population in developing countries. So that is something that the faith community spent a lot of time and effort to clarify those misconceptions. The other is that the faith community also worked a lot to promote support for ICPD ratification by the different countries. And on this, there were sessions that the faith community held with the governments, were held with parliamentarians, convincing them on the need for the countries to adopt, for the different countries to adopt ICPD and its plan of action. Of course, we are aware that not all countries adopted at that particular time ICPD and its plan of action, and some that adopted with reservations based, of course, on their different points of view. And that is those are some of the different actions that the faith community was taking to popularize ICPD and to promote ICPD and to ensure that it is ratified and becomes then helpful in policy making and plans at national level in different countries. And one of the things that actually ICPD itself in this plan of action, the preamble section recognizes, is that the implementation of the recommendation contained in the program of action is the sovereign right of each country, consistent with national laws and development priorities, with full respect for the various religious and cultural values and cultural backgrounds of its people, and in conformity with the universally recognized international human rights. And therefore, the recognition of religion, culture, and their place in influencing what nation states affirm to is very, very critical and very, very important that this was done within the ICPD plan of action. So the faith community, therefore, stepping in to clarify that indeed ICPD was a good instrument. Its plan of action was a good instrument for adoption by countries, and to clarify the myths and misconceptions that were there flying left, right, and center was critical to me. And I would say the success of the implementation and also the ratification that we have seen of ICPD and its plan of action. To more or less get to my final comments on this, is that the faith community has shown a lot of support for ICPD, including during the summit, where ICPD was celebrating 25 years, if I'm not wrong, where the faith community also made statements in support of ICPD commitments, just like national states were also making commitments and other stakeholders. And to further help clarify the importance of the faith community, is that the faith community provides a lot of sexual reproductive health services, information and education and training within its own facilities. Faith community runs health facilities. Faith community runs training institutions where they train nurses, they train doctors, they train clinical officers who provide sexual reproductive health services, information and education. Faith community has hospitals, health centers, clinics, and other such facilities that provide services even in very remote areas that you cannot find any other service except that one of the faith. And also faith community runs and operates schools, establishes schools and training institutions and other tertiary education institutions of different levels, where sexual reproductive health, information, education, and training is actually provided to both teachers, young children, adolescents, and even young people. And also in its own places of worship, the faith community further does provide the same services in terms of providing education, providing clarification, theological even clarification around issues around sexual reproductive health services and rights, and information and education to the congregation members. And therefore, it is very, very important that the global community, the UN, the governments, other stakeholders, donors, really partner with the faith community as a key stakeholder in providing sexual reproductive health and services, and ensuring the realization of the aspirations that are contained in ICPD and the plan of action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for giving us that background and the importance of faith communities and you know, the climate of you know, what was happening in the background with this, like you were sharing, that that ICPD was forced onto developing countries, and this misconception having to be clarified. So thank you very much. There were definitely, I'm sure, many other struggles and efforts behind the scenes that took place. So next, I will introduce Barbara Ortiz. She is the regional advisor for normative, intergovernmental, and civil society frameworks at the UN Women Regional Office for the Americas and the Caribbean since 2018. Throughout her career, Barbara has worked with UN agencies, development agencies, NGOs, and European Union institutions, developing skills in technical and policy advocacy program, policy advice, program management, and multi-stakeholder partnership building. So Barbara, we will also be commemorating the 30th anniversary of, you know, I had mentioned the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action next year in 2025. So how is UN Women working to promote dialogue between faith and feminist actors to advance both the ICPD program of action and the Beijing plan of action, platform for action?
Well, thank you very much, Ivy, and thank you very much for all the organizers, the UN Multi-Faith Advisory Council and the UN Population Fund for inviting UN women to be part of this important initiative. I say good morning, good afternoon, good night also to all the participants, and I will continue now my intervention in Spanish. Bueno, promover la justicia y la paz son valores universales que comparten tanto el sistema de las Naciones Unidas como las principales religiones que en su predicamento abogan por la convivencia, el diálogo y la paz. El mandato de ONU Mujeres está enfocado en el logro de la igualdad de género para mejorar las condiciones de vida de millones de mujeres y niñas en todo el mundo. Las religiones pueden jugar un rol decisivo en diversas áreas que afectan a la igualdad de género y el empoderamiento de las mujeres, y en las que ONU Mujeres trabaja directamente, como pueden ser la prevención y la erradicación de la violencia contra las mujeres y las niñas, la inclusión de la igualdad de género y la participación de las mujeres en la respuesta y mitigación al cambio climático y la prevención de desastres. También, por ejemplo, el apoyo al empoderamiento económico de las mujeres como una manera efectiva para salir de la pobreza. Además, las mujeres son parte fundamental de la vida religiosa de todas las comunidades y suelen ser las que mantienen la práctica religiosa en el día a día, siendo el principal actor en la transmisión de valores a las siguientes generaciones. Sin embargo, y a pesar de que las diferencias se pueden encontrar entre una religión y otra, la mayoría de ellas coincide en dar a las mujeres un rol secundario, manteniendo unas estructuras y unas creencias y prácticas que perpetúan en la práctica la desigualdad y la discriminación contra las mujeres y las niñas. Teniendo en cuenta estos factores, desde la Oficina Regional de ONU Mujeres pusimos en marcha una iniciativa llamada Diálogos hacia la Igualdad, encuentros entre organizaciones basadas en la fe y organizaciones feministas, cuyo objetivo es promover espacios de confianza y diálogo para generar conversaciones entre personas y grupos de organizaciones basadas en la fe de diferentes credos y organizaciones feministas y de mujeres en toda la mujer. En este marco, ONU Mujeres desarrolló una metodología de trabajo enfocada en facilitar espacios de diálogo que favorecieran una agenda para la igualdad y promoviera transformaciones de imaginarios sobre lo que es la igualdad de género y los derechos de las mujeres. Para ello se realizaron diálogos nacionales en Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador y un diálogo con organizaciones de toda la región de América Latina y el Caribe. En total, más de 90 representantes de organizaciones basadas en la fe y organizaciones feministas de todas las mujeres de la región participaron en estos diálogos. Si bien cada uno de estos diálogos tuvo un énfasis particular considerando las circunstancias y las experiencias de los y las participantes, sí me gustaría compartir con ustedes algunos aspectos claves que se repitieron de manera recurrente. Por ejemplo, la importancia de mantener canales de comunicación abiertos entre las organizaciones de diferentes credos y enfoques para construir relaciones de confianza, respeto mutuo y transparencia, que permitan avanzar en los temas de interés común y rechazando la violencia de género, la promoción y promoviendo los derechos humanos y la defensa y la protección del medio ambiente, entre otros temas. La necesidad de generar acciones de cambio social y cultural para promover una interpretación inclusiva de los libros sagrados, que tenga en cuenta el rol de las mujeres en los diferentes credos, así como activar procesos colectivos para la defensa de la libertad de culto y la defensa también del Estado laico. Luego, la promoción de una educación holística que tenga en cuenta la promoción de espacios de formación y la construcción de currículos incluyentes en clave de derechos humanos y que incorporen la perspectiva de género y los derechos entre las mujeres. Espero que estos puntos hayan sido de su interés y reitero muchas gracias por invitarme a este espacio.
Yes, Barbara, it was very interesting. These dialogues that you conducted. Yeah, I was very interested to hear that. So thank you for sharing. So now I'd like to call Imam Khalfan Eli Bukuru. He's a president, founder, and legal representative of AICNDH. Imam Khalfan is one of the leaders of the Muslim community in Burundi. And he's also a hashtag Imams for She project manager. So Imam Khalfan, as a religious leader, what are some of the ways you're contributing to the ICPD program of action?
Bon, merci beaucoup. Bonjour, bonjour à tous les participants. Bonjour à chers collègues panélistes. Bonjour à tout le monde. Et comme vous le dites, il n'y a pas d'islam sans la femme. C'est ce qu'on peut quand même commencer par là, car dans un monde où la femme occupe une place beaucoup plus importante en nombre, elle est considérée comme une école, si elle est très bien entretenue pour dire, éduquer, autonomiser, mais aussi protéger et aussi garantir dans ses droits. Les leaders religieux ont vraiment un grand rôle à jouer parce que les fidèles ou bien la congrégation viennent dans les églises ou bien dans les mosquées sans avoir aucune invitation, mais aussi sans avoir aucune convocation pour répondre présent. C'est la raison pour laquelle, lorsque les fidèles sont dans les mosquées ou bien dans les églises, ils écoutent vraiment ce que dit l'imam, ce qui dit le prêtre, ce qui dit le pasteur. Et tout ce qu'il dit est considéré comme un message de Dieu. C'est la raison pour laquelle il doit nécessairement être perçu sans problème. En principe, et quand on regarde toutes les écritures, surtout en islam, on voit que il y a une interconnexion entre elles. Mais le grand défaut, ce n'est pas du fait du Coran ou bien des traditions du prophète, mais c'est une mauvaise interprétation des textes islamiques, une mauvaise interprétation donnée par des imams, ou bien des cheikhs, ou bien des prédicateurs influents et qui prêchent à l'encontre des droits de la femme. Et pour nous, après avoir remarqué cela, en s'inspirant aussi d'une vaste campagne initiée par UNIFEM en 2014, la campagne He4She, et avec notre partenaire Muslim Corporate Values, MPV, nous avons initié une campagne similaire dénommée la campagne Imam 4She, dont je suis le directeur général. Et cette campagne nous a aidé à développer 5 programmes principaux et qui sont des actions concrètes pour contribuer à l'ICPD 30. Nous avons eu le premier programme qui est les ateliers éducationnels et où nous appelons les imams, les cheikhs, les responsables des mosquées, les femmes leaders à embrasser cet atelier où nous parcourons ensemble ce qui dit la jurisprudence islamique tout en faisant une comparaison avec la loi internationale. La jurisprudence islamique, c'est la loi islamique, et tout en faisant une comparaison avec la loi internationale. Ici, on montre par des exemples concrets ce que c'est des versets coraniques qui peuvent être utilisés pour soutenir l'égalité du genre en islam, les traditions du prophète à qui on peut prêcher et pour pouvoir augmenter la perception des droits des femmes, mais aussi ce que l'imam peut prêcher et pour changer la communauté et pour aussi inviter les hommes présents dans la mosquée pour donner une vision beaucoup plus globale en rapport avec les droits de la femme. Nous n'allons pas arrêter par là, parce que nous avons aussi développé un autre programme qu'on a appelé le Radio Programme. Ce programme, on passait des émissions radio chaque semaine et sur la radio nationale. Et cela, on le faisait pourquoi? Et parce que dans les ateliers qu'on organisait, et ça ne suffisait pas pour pouvoir atteindre beaucoup de personnes, mais si les imams étaient présents, mais si aussi les imams avaient un grand nombre de fidèles dans les mosquées, mais il y a d'autres coins dans lesquels on ne peut pas du tout arriver. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous avons créé ce programme pour pouvoir atteindre un grand nombre. Et ce programme a atteint à peu près 2,7 millions de la population. En plus, nous avons essayé aussi d'engager, dans un troisième programme, engager les femmes et les filles elles-mêmes. Et pour les engager, nous avons aussi initié ce que nous avons appelé les clubs 4She. Ce sont des clubs qu'on a mis en place où la participation était exclusivement des femmes. Et essayer d'exploiter ce qui dit le Coran, ce qui dit la tradition du prophète, ce qui dit la charia, la jurisprudence, en rapport avec les droits de la femme, en rapport avec l'égalité des genres. Et on faisait un cas d'été pour qu'ils puissent exactement passer un bon moment ensemble, mais pour pouvoir exploiter cela. Après, pour le quatrième, nous avons aussi initié ce qu'on appelle sensibilisation de masse ce que nous avons appelé Teen Club. Ces sensibilisations de masse invitent des élèves ici des écoles islamiques et tous les élèves ici des écoles islamiques de pouvoir essayer d'incarner les enseignements dont ils ont réussi à travers les pièces de théâtre, à travers les chants qui composent et chantent sur le chant, mais aussi à travers des narrations, mais aussi avec des vidéos qu'ils diffusent sur leur page Facebook, un peu de pouvoir donner un message beaucoup plus clair aux autres. En plus, en dernière position, nous avons mis ensemble parce que lorsque on veut exactement changer les mentalités des gens, c'est mieux, on peut commencer par des personnes âgées, des personnes adultes, mais pour pouvoir essayer d'avoir une certaine pérennité, lorsqu'on peut exactement pour pouvoir arriver loin, il faut aussi essayer de transformer les enfants, les petits-enfants. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous avons mis en place un curriculum inclusif. Ce curriculum qui comptait 20 leçons, 20 chapitres avec 45 leçons, était exclusivement réservé aux enfants de 7 ans à 12 ans. Et ces chapitres relatent exclusivement ce que c'est le droit de la femme musulmane, le droit de la fille musulmane, pour qu'il y ait une tolérance beaucoup plus large. Et ce curriculum est en train d'être dispensé dans 69 madrasas. Les 69 madrasas où nous avons atteint jusqu'à présent 10 000 et plus de 10 000 personnes, plus de 10 000 enfants qui sont répartis dans ces 69 madrasas et dans tout le pays. En ce qui concerne le réseautage, dans le réseautage, les imams qui ont été formés en rapport avec les droits des femmes, on les a mis en raison pour pouvoir se communiquer entre eux, mais pour pouvoir aussi essayer d'éclaircir ce qu'ils n'ont pas compris et pendant tous ces 5 programmes dont on a relaté là-bas. Et ils nous aident à donner un message beaucoup plus clair. Et pour le moment, nous avons, depuis l'implantation de cette campagne Obsforchi, nous avons eu les leaders religieux et les représentants des femmes. Nous avons à peu près 3400 imams et les leaders religieux femmes que nous avons formés en rapport avec les droits des femmes. Et pour clôturer, nous avons vraiment joué un grand rôle au niveau des transformations de l'autonomisation des femmes. Jusqu'à présent, le programme a mis ensemble des coopératives, un système de création des coopératives initié par les femmes et dirigé par les femmes. Nous avons 48 coopératives réparties dans tout le pays et qui regroupent 1400 femmes. Et ces coopératives ont été mises en place depuis 2018 jusqu'à 2023. Nous comptons exactement aussi faire un pas vers l'avant pour qu'on puisse quand même atteindre un nombre considérable de femmes qui sont regroupées dans des coopératives. Et pour une raison beaucoup plus forte, les femmes qui sont dans les coopératives aident les autres qui n'y sont pas de donner de bonnes leçons, de donner une bonne cohabitation avec les non-musulmans, mais aussi ça leur facilite une intégration sociale, une intégration de la communauté islamique du Burundi et dans le reste de la société. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much. I'm sure you can go on and on. It's so impressive, the amount of educational activities you're doing and the awareness raising. Thank you. So Rachel Tavernar is our next panelist, and she's a global gender strategist at ACT Alliance, a coalition of over 150 faith-based organizations working for sustainable development humanitarian response and advocacy. For the last 6 years, she's been facilitating strategic gender advocacy and development, collaborative initiatives at the intersection of gender, faith, and human rights. Rachel, you're a part of a study that evidences the role of faith-based actors, which have contributed to the implementation of the ICPD program of action. Where has significant progress been made so far?
Thank you for the question, Ivy, and to my fellow panelists who have already evidenced some of the progress made. Over the past 3 decades, faith-based actors have played a pivotal role in realising the goals of the International Conference on Population and Development, significantly contributing to advances in sexual and reproductive health and rights and gender equality. Yet, in policy spaces such as the UN, we often only hear a narrow version of religion, especially Christianity, which is mobilised and instrumentalised to block progress on achieving universal and interdependent human rights, most notably related to sexual and reproductive health and rights. ACT Alliance, with our members and partners, are working with the Joint Learning Initiative and their researcher, Dr. Nora Calaf-Elledge, to conduct a study that evidences how faith-based actors have and continue to effectively implement the ICPD Programme of Action. Special thanks to everyone who contributed case studies and examples when signing up to this event. And there is still time to submit your case studies and examples if you are inspired following your participation here. This will be used as part of the study that will be published later this year. I want to focus on 3 main areas of progress where faith plays a progressive and transformative role. The first is the ability of faith-based actors to promote sexual and reproductive health and rights. This includes, as service providers, we have established clinics, hospitals, and community-based programs to provide comprehensive sexual and reproductive healthcare services, which includes, for example, family planning, maternal and child health, HIV/AIDS prevention and treatment, safe houses, and gender-based violence services. Faith actors also contribute to awareness raising and education, including comprehensive sexuality education through workshops and toolkits. Faith communities often have diverse communication platforms, as we've just heard in Burundi, around that can reach a broad audience, educate communities about SRHR, dispel those myths and misconceptions, as we heard from Peter's intervention, and especially those that conflate religious and cultural practices. We are in a unique position to counter those myths and misconceptions and promote informed decision-making. Many have encouraged theological education and critical reflection on gender, sexuality, and reproductive health that transform social norms to advance gender equality. Yet, we often aren't evidencing the work that we're doing. We're outside the formal structures of maybe big NGO programs or government programs, and sometimes that's hidden. It's also conversations that we have behind closed doors. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to take forward this research. The second point we wanted to highlight from this study is the role of faith actors in advocating for gender equality, influencing both policy and practice. Faith leaders and organisations have actively spoken out for gender equality within their faith communities to challenge harmful practices such as forced child marriage, female genital mutilation, and gender-based violence. This can often be challenging work to provoke change from within our very own communities, including women in decision-making spaces and reinterpreting our religious teachings and scriptures. Yet it is critical work for the implementation of those policies into practices. Faith-based networks and alliances are also powerful influencers of policy and legislation at national, regional, and international levels. For example, they have advanced access to contraceptives and to safe abortion services, including the decriminalisation of abortion and the protection of women's reproductive rights. Faith actors have worked with governments to implement SRHR policies and programmes, ensuring that services reach marginalised populations, including when some states fail to be present, as Peter emphasised. They are often sometimes the only point of contact for their communities. The third area to highlight is building bridges and partnerships, which our event today showcases. Faith actors have engaged in interfaith dialogues, as Barbara has shared, and collaboration on sexual and reproductive health and rights. At times behind closed doors, where we seek to find common ground and promote shared values. This has led to increased cooperation and stronger collective voices for change, and in recent years, more intentional partnerships with secular feminist and women's rights organizations, recognizing that sometimes the faith community has sat on the margins, and those feminist faith actors have also been marginalized within their own faith community. So that's really important to emphasize the work that is being done, sometimes not visible, in building bridges and partnerships. To conclude, the evidence so far gathered in this study demonstrates that faith actors have been essential in advancing the ICPD Programme of Action over the past 3 decades. Their continued engagement, collaboration, innovative approaches are critical to achieving universal access to sexual and reproductive health and rights and gender equality. Thank you, Ivy.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for your work in this research in JLI, and it's so important. We need to share it widely. So, so we've reflected on the journey so far. I'm about to call back all of the panelists who've spoken over the last 30 years. So now we want to hear what some of the learnings to take forward in the next decade of implementation. So what is one of your key learnings that you'd like to share? So I'll start first with Peter.
Thank you, Ivy. One of the key learning over the decades is that the faith community is a critical partner in realizing sexual reproductive health and rights of people across the world. Yes, there might be some instances where there can be areas that the faith community does not necessarily agree with others, but it's also, those also points also are really the points for further dialogue and further discussion towards building a consensus. So the faith remains a really critical pillar in providing services, sexual reproductive health and rights services, information and education, in very many communities where there is no other provider, because it's often not driven by profit, but by the compassion and the service to the people. And therefore, it remains a critical partner for many organizations, donors, and governments, and should always be taken that way, even where there could be areas where there are points where consensus is not necessarily reached. We should always work towards what we agree upon as we work to further improve or further clarify and reach consensus on areas where there could be disagreements. And that, I think, is one of the key lessons for me.
Thank you, Peter. Barbara?
Gracias, Ivy. Bueno, 30 años después de la adopción de la Declaración y Plataforma de Acción de Beijing, avanzar en el logro de la igualdad de género y el empoderamiento de las mujeres y las niñas es más urgente que nunca. Ante un reto de tal magnitud, necesitamos establecer consensos amplios de base ancha y alianzas entre diferentes actores que no pierdan de vista lo importante, que es mejorar la vida de las mujeres y las niñas de nuestra región y del mundo y darles la oportunidad de desarrollar todo su potencial humano. En este marco es fundamental expandir el diálogo entre aquellos actores que no necesariamente forman parte de los socios tradicionales, como organizaciones basadas en la fe y organizaciones feministas y de mujeres, pero con los que es importante establecer canales de comunicación sólidos para avanzar en los intereses comunes que sin duda compartimos para lograr la justicia de género. En este sentido, me gustaría compartir algunos puntos. En primer lugar, que conocerse mejor y conocerse de manera directa lleva a un mayor entendimiento. especialmente ahora cuando hay muchas noticias falsas y muchos falsos entendimientos que pueden establecer barreras que se pueden solucionar con una comunicación directa entre los actores involucrados. En segundo lugar, que en ese diálogo compartido es más fácil identificar áreas de interés común en las cuales se pueden intercambiar inquietudes sobre cómo unir fuerzas para superar obstáculos y aprovechar las oportunidades que se pueden encontrar en el camino. En tercer lugar, que identificar...
Excuse me, just one moment. We're having an issue with the interpretation. It seems like the Spanish to English, we're hearing either an echo. It sounds like there are two voices speaking. Could we try to? Yes, now it's fine. Yes, okay. Sorry to interrupt.
No, gracias, Ivy. Finalmente quería enfocarme en cómo el trabajo comunitario, que tanto organizaciones basadas en la fe como organizaciones feministas y de mujeres llevan a cabo, es una excelente oportunidad para avanzar en los objetivos comunes que ambas organizaciones pueden compartir, como la justicia social, la prevención y la eliminación de la violencia contra las mujeres o el cuidado del medio ambiente, entre otros aspectos. Estas consideraciones plantean oportunidades para avanzar tanto en la implementación del programa de acción de la Conferencia Internacional de Población y Desarrollo como en la Declaración y Plataforma de Acción de Beijing, especialmente en los puntos que tienen en común en torno a la igualdad de género, los derechos reproductivos y de salud de las mujeres, el empoderamiento, la eliminación de la violencia, la educación y la participación en la toma de decisiones. Para finalizar, desde ONU Mujeres nos gustaría resaltar la importancia de avanzar de la mano con las organizaciones feministas y de mujeres, considerando su diversidad tanto de origen como geográfica y de enfoque, y asegurando que siempre están adecuadamente representadas en toda su interseccionalidad, garantizando que tienen un lugar en la mesa donde se toman las decisiones y que sus demandas y sus propuestas son tenidas en cuenta como agentes de cambio y de desarrollo social. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Barbara. Imam Khalfan. You are still muted.
Merci beaucoup. Oui, merci beaucoup. Je pense que depuis 8 ans d'existence de notre campagne Imam Foshi, et c'est vraiment une période beaucoup plus considérable pour pouvoir tirer des conclusions, mais aussi pour pouvoir donner des leçons apprises, mais aussi spécifier des souhaits, des leçons que nous projetons avoir d'ici dans les 10 prochaines années. Mais cela peut être se résumer en un seul point, c'est avoir un grand nombre des imams influents sur le territoire national et qui prêchent pour lutter contre les enseignements misogynes, pour lutter contre l'inégalité de sexe, pour lutter contre le non-accès à l'éducation, pour lutter contre l'inégalité des chances au niveau du travail, au niveau de l'éducation, etc., etc. Mais aussi, et pour avoir des imams influents et qui prêchent pour une masculinité positive. Une masculinité positive où les hommes doivent nécessairement s'engager côte à côte avec leurs épouses, avec leurs sœurs, avec leurs mamans, avec leurs tantes, etc. Une masculinité positive où les hommes doivent nécessairement jouer un rôle pleinement dans leur foyer, tout en sachant que la femme aussi a une place beaucoup plus importante. Une masculinité positive où le travail à la maison, au travail, dans n'importe quelle structure de société, doivent nécessairement être en coercition avec les droits des femmes. Nous aimerions aussi avoir des imams qui prêchent pour le respect des autres, qui voient que le droit de la femme est indispensable pour un développement d'une société, pour un développement d'une communauté, pour un développement d'un pays, où le respect des droits des femmes est vraiment une condition sine qua non pour avoir des sociétés paisibles, pour avoir des pays paisibles. Mais aussi, nous voulons avoir des imams, nous voulons avoir des leaders religieux qui prêchent qui ont l'empathie et qui voient qu'une femme violée, une femme dont les droits sont violés, vraiment touche le cœur de ces prêcheurs. Nous voulons aussi des prédicateurs, nous voulons aussi des leaders religieux qui vont assumer une responsabilité égalitaire, c'est-à-dire qui va être le modèle, qui va être comme une pause café dans sa société, qui va être comme un torchambrir au niveau de sa société. Nous voulons aussi avoir des imams qui prêchent pour soutenir une femme afin d'asseoir dans son fort intérieur un leadership féminin fort. Nous voulons aussi un imam qui va prêcher pendant longtemps pour pouvoir augmenter le nombre de femmes qui vont participer dans la vie économique de leur société, dans la vie économique de leur pays, dans la vie économique du monde entier. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Imam Kauf. So, Rachel?
Thanks, Ivy. As a network of faith-based organizations and churches, ACT Alliance has learned with our members and national forums the power of transforming communities from within. This requires action to be locally rooted, address our diverse contexts, and speak truth that empowers. That means that what works in Burundi might not be the same that works in Ireland because our contexts are different. Yet what is the same is that the most powerful change makers are people within the community themselves. This includes religious and traditional leaders who are often trusted and respected voices, and the first responders in times of crisis, as we've already heard. As we look to the next decade of implementation, we will take forward learnings related to locally led action for gender justice. For example, the ACT Argentina Forum, who are affirming faith narratives on dignity, self-determination, liberation, autonomy, and justice, using transformative approaches to scripture, dialogue, and prophetic advocacy. And the ACT Zimbabwe Forum, who are mobilizing faith actors to address deep-rooted social norms and patriarchal interpretations of religious texts to transform masculinities to advance gender equality. And we'll also be taking learnings from our communities of practices, which bring together our members to strengthen one another's capacity and collective advocacy to strategically advance SRHR. We are often uniquely positioned as faith-based actors to counter backlashes, in particular when religion is being used to block progress, and will continue to seek allies and partners at all levels. And this is a warm invitation for those gathered in the room today. One of the learnings from the study, which I also wish to emphasize, is that faith actors are often flexible, self-starters and innovators, and seek creative solutions and partnerships to ensure sustainability of our gender justice work. Yet, to ensure the implementation of the ICPD Programme of Action and to counter the backlashes that are ever growing on gender equality, we need people to fund us like you want us to win, and channel resources to locally led action that speaks truth that empowers from within our communities. This work can sometimes be slow, it can be challenging, and for those defending SRHR, can have grave personal costs as the anti-rights movement seek to silence those who have the power to provoke transformative change. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for ending this section with that. So I would like to call on our respondent. So Emily Waidrud is a policy advisor in sexual and reproductive health and rights at ACT Church of Sweden. And she supports and engages in advocacy and policy work on various issues at both national, regional, and global levels, vis-a-vis decision makers and other relevant stakeholders. Emily, you've been listening to the conversation so far, so please share your reflections.
Thank you so much, Ivy. I hope you can hear me okay. Thank you to all the speakers on the vast knowledge and expertise that they just gave us today, and giving such crucial examples of faith actors' engagement over a span of 30 years for the ICPD Programme of Action. As Actors Sweden has been engaging actively in ICPD for many years, alongside many of the partners present today, we're honoured to provide our reflections based on what was shared today. So, faith actors in their diversity, beyond this room, of course, has and will continue to support the implementation of the Programme of Action. And that sometimes is beyond our view and behind, as we've heard, closed doors. We're all aware of the challenges we face for implementing the Programme of Action, particularly around gender equality and SRHR, and the consequences that has for sustainable development, human rights, dignity, and bodily autonomy of all people. And religion plays a role in those challenges. We can't bypass that, nor should we. But if we only paid attention to what is being said at the UN level around ICPD, around these aspects, we only hear, as we've heard, a very narrow version of religion, where it's mobilized and instrumentalized to block progress, particularly on SRHR and in human rights, as we were reminded by the ACT Alliance presentation. And so this panel, I think, reminds us all that we need to look beyond that polarization, so we don't miss the potential that exists at the ground level of faith actors in their diversity doing this work. So looking back, we realize this is a history we're not often so aware of. The example raised, for example, by Mr. Menene, the role that faith actors played in 1994 to help clarify rumors and allegations of conspiracies that were spreading at the time, and engage in advocacy vis-a-vis the government, or vis-a-vis governments, which is why this burgeoning research by ACT Alliance will be so welcome, as evidence of what has worked and what has happened, so we can strengthen it is crucial. And the presenters provides us with very important reminders of the various roles that faith actors have and continue to have today, relevant for the ICPD Programme of Action. Because faith actors exist as stakeholders across the spectrum, and faith actors exist in great diversity around supporting and implementing the Programme of Action, including on SRHR. They exist as service providers, we've heard, delivering essential social protection through health facilities as part of the health system, as well as through education, information, and training. And this is a hugely ignored part sometimes of faith actors' contributions, or by the potential to contribute to the Programme of Action. And sometimes have those healthcare facilities, as we've heard, sometimes cover huge percentages of the health system in a context, and sometimes are the only ones that has the potential to reach those furthest left behind. And with that, ensuring quality access of services for all within that and all services is essential. They're also present as civil society actors, human rights defenders, advocating for access and rights vis-a-vis decision makers, and conducting community-based, locally led actions for gender justice and SRHR and other issues. And sometimes, as we heard, working in shrinking spaces at times due to this backlash and polarization that we are all aware of. And this is an important aspect to address, as faith actors working for these issues are often, sometimes, doing so in isolation, as partnering from allies can be lacking. And this is crucial for us to remember. They're also bearers or influencers of norms. The example from Imam Khalfan, for example, shows just how influential religious leadership is and what interpretations are given priority, and how working with that leadership and how we can all equip and partner better with that leadership is crucial for influencing norms around gender. And the reminder that there are resources, not only obstacles within religious practice, empathy, kindness, respect, among many. Moreover, they're there as duty bearers, moral or legal, and we can't bypass that faith actors holds power and influence for exactly the policies and programs that govern ICPD-related issues, which is why making or supporting that which work all the more important. And I echo that which our panel has said in various ways here, that we need to build bridges to strengthen the partnerships with faith actors, whether we are state, civil society, or multilaterals. And that's an important aspect to ensure the success of ICPD. And we heard the great example from Barbara Ortiz, for example, of how partnering and dialogue between multilateral system and faith actors can be conducted. And as we look back to look forward, it is important to ensure learnings between ICPD and other related agendas, such as Beijing happens. To ensure success as we move into the new decade of ICPD, to summarize, we have to look beyond this polarization to move forward, always addressing that which is harmful when human rights and human dignity is not upheld, and addressing this backlash. And yes, when it comes to this backlash, faith actors have knowledge of how to mitigate. And that means we must also, which we've done today, give space, oxygen, attention, and resources towards that which works, where faith actors are contributing, partnering, and leading in service of this agenda and their communities, and ensure that that is done better together. And I would like to end with a quote from the World Council of Churches, a huge network with which we're a member, written in their written statement from 1994 to the Cairo conference, to aptly kind of remind us precisely of the diversity that has existed and always will exist. And it says like this: among the churches within the fellowship, there's a wide spectrum of approaches to these issues. While respecting these differences, we're seeking to encourage and maintain an open, constructive dialogue on them, both among ourselves and with other churches and people of other faiths. And with that, I look forward to that we all hold ourselves accountable to do that inside and out, to continue that dialogue. And this session today is a great example of that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you everyone, all of the speakers, for sharing your experiences and expertise. This was such an informative, encouraging session today. We're going to take a little break and can reconvene. So please get up, stretch at 9:55. So that's actually only about 3 minutes, but hopefully you'll be able to stand up for a little bit before we start for the second session. Thank you so much.
We're at 9:56, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks, Sarika. It's great to continue on this really important conversation that we're having. I want to say that we hope you stretched your legs a little bit, ran for some water or tea, and that you stick with us. In that first session, I wrote notes for all of the speakers and a few things that really jumped out. Sometimes when we have these conversations, we have so much to say, but I want to name and acknowledge I'm really thankful for all the honest and powerful bits that folks shared within their greater message. I think it's critical we have that discussion. And Emily, you named it with a lot of your observations and your candid reflections really called out, I think, the type of contributions to these discussions that will actually move us forward and move the faith community and the civil society community forward together in order to continue down the ICP road. It's not a straight road to travel. We demonstrated that with the speakers. And there's some cracks in the road, some learnings, some mistakes, but in many ways now we can consider those to be the information and the lessons to build bridges and continue on with this work. So the next session will take us down that road and share insights on some of the methodologies and tools used to make significant steps forward, and then in the context of the future. To guide us in the next session, we're joined by Katerina Tino. She is UNFPA's focal point for the Faith and Culture portfolio at the New York headquarters. She works to support, strengthen, and guide the organizational engagement with faith actors for the implementation of the ICPD program of action. She also co-chairs the Interagency Task Force on Religion and Sustainable Development, of which the Multi-Faith Advisory Council advises. She's also been an active collaborator in making today's event possible, and that is Katerina. She makes so many things possible related to the work that we do to have these conversations. Katerina, you're tireless, you're so reliable, and you somehow have continued to really demand that the UN system, which is a big system, be innovative and really walk the talk of our work. So for that, thanks.
Thank you, Casey. And welcome, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. And welcome to today's second session called Creating a Safe Space for Learning and Building Bridges. And hopefully that's what we'll do now. With our speakers, we will try to address myths and misconceptions, obstacles and strategies to advance the ICPD agenda in faith communities as well as international settings. And in particular, we will look at 5 themes where faith actors are working to bring about change, often facing resistance within their own faith communities. So they will share with us the strategies that they are putting in place to overcome these challenges and share the lessons learned on how to expand our base of supporters. Our first speaker today will be Reverend Celia Azar. Reverend Azar was born in Jerusalem, and as a pastor's child, she always considered the church as her second home. She is also evidently young, and therefore, very importantly, she's bringing the voice and the perspective of young people of faith. So, Reverend Azar, you are the first Palestinian woman to be ordained as pastor in the Holy Land with the Evangelical Lutheran Church. You said that the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land adopted a gender justice policy, but women still don't see themselves in that policy. So what do you think needs to happen for gender equality to be truly reflected in your church and in all of churches and in all faith traditions?
Thank you, Katerina. I'm happy to be here. And indeed, gender justice and its policy that we've applied for since 2016 or 17, we have a gender justice desk that works tiresome, with our churches intensively. And when the ordination happened, we could quite see how things are or how people actually think about pastors being ordained. And I think on that point, it only works when there's a change of people's hearts. So I think working intensively with the people, with the community, and change the perspective that how we always read the Bible, because reading the Bible from a masculine perspective is always a different kind of well, you always leave out the women and the importance of women in the Bible, and then always pointing that out mostly for the men, but also for the women, because it's mostly women who also advocated against having women in the churches. So I think teaching the Bible in a gender equality way helps overcome these thoughts in terms of changing the society and empowering each other, because just having a woman pastor, just saying we have a woman pastor, or just saying we have a woman who works as a judge in our church, or not only that, but even in the whole society, having women as in leadership positions, with just for leadership positions' sake to say we have a woman is not enough. It is more than that. It is actually in each person's actually believing in it, because if you don't believe in it, then you cannot proceed with the whole we cannot proceed in anything, because then it didn't mean anything, because then it's just a name. And I think it always is, when you start with one church, I think now ecumenically, even in the churches, people have started accepting, like not accepting in the sense of they want to ordain women, but accepting me just being there. And I think that's a big point. And that helps in many ways to see how we can always change our thoughts, because in the beginning there are a lot of hardships in terms of, oh, we'll never talk to a woman and so on, and now people actually greet me, they talk to me, and I think these developments, we can see that in the society they need time, yet that first point has to be taken in order to overcome it, and it's actually through relationships that these things change. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Reverend Azar. It is a pleasure now to introduce the Venerable Lama Ngodok Dorji, who is connecting from Bhutan. Venerable Lama Dorji is the 15th hereditary Lama of Singkhar, Bhutan. He represents the Nyingma school in the Commission for Religious Organizations of Bhutan. Venerable Lama Dorji, you are the chair of the Curriculum Development Committee of the Commission for Religious Organizations in Bhutan. And in that capacity, you have worked with UNFPA since 2011 to introduce sexuality education in monasteries in Bhutan. Can you please tell us about this journey? What changes did it bring about, both within the monasteries and in the wider Bhutanese society?
Thank you so much, Katrina. And I'd like to wish the state organizers and the panelists and participants a very good evening or good morning, depending on the time zone we're at. Well, apparently I'm coming from Bhutan, a tiny Himalayan kingdom, and it's a country where Buddhism is prevalent. And the Buddhist figure plays a very important role, and we're present in almost all walks of life, from birth to youth, to sickness, to death, and even thereafter. So, in other words, religious figures still remain to be the most trusted, people in the country. Well, I would like to just sort of bring about what Buddhist philosophy is, so that we can connect with the life skills as well as what we have been doing so far. Personally, I was involved with life skills education from 2011, and in fact, it was me in my capacity as the then founding secretary of the RP Foundation who actually sort of opened the door to the religious organizations that are enrolled with the Commission for Religious Organizations of Bhutan. Ever since we did life skills sensitization, the first and foremost we did was to see where life skills education would be heading in a monastic institution or an environment. So we invited about 40 faith leaders, had a 2-day workshop as to sensitize and to see, how suitable or acceptable it would be, because oftentimes it's perceived that in a religious setting, things can be sensitive. But after 2 days, I still remember that after 2 days, it was not only receptive, but it was applauded as a tool, a timely tool. And I always say that the teachings of the Buddha are logical, and there are many things that is actually being taught as what life skills intend to teach. So the incorporation of life skills as we teach, and the teachings of the Buddha, the philosophical teachings of the Buddha, remain true to or can partnering each other. So from that perspective, we have been able to sort of really link what life skills education is all about, and how we, as a respected figure or somebody who has been trustworthy in the eyes of the public, would gap the bridge between spiritual people and then the unreached or the mass, I would say. Ever since then, we have had life skills education taken all around the country. We have touched almost every monastic institutions, be it private or government. Later on, we went on to offer life skills training for trainers, whereby we have trained quite a number of religious figures who in turn have used it to sort of impart their training to their organizations and the community nearby. The results that we have been told or we hear about can be amazing. It's not like, that life skills, as I mentioned, is very much incorporated in what we call Buddhist philosophy. But then how we impart, for example, I always say that the teachings of the Buddha or the philosophy that the Buddha taught was always valid, is valid, and will always be valid for the reason that it's a truth. But then truth cannot just be truth as in, what I'm trying to say is like, sugar is always sweet. But the fact that sugar, as we know, for example, during my childhood, as I grew up, was this tiny crystallized cubes. I don't think we can present it to the next generation or the third generation from here. So hence, we need to, sort of, when the philosophy of the Buddha is very much prevalent and relevant, the fact that we welcome and want to do it is to see how we can use life skills education brought in by UNFPA as a tool to be even more, to make life more easier for the monastic community as well as for the public. And that's where we really open up the door. So when we talk about life skills education, the main thing we're talking is trying to solve a problem. And given that, in the life, one of the things that I liked in life skills education is the power module. And if we translate that power module onto the local term, it doesn't really make sense. But then what we have in Buddhism is what we call the Four Noble Truth. That was first propagated by the Buddha right after his enlightenment. And that in life skills education would equal to the power module. For example, we're trying to look at suffering, trying to find the cause of suffering, and try to be on the path for a solution and eventually free ourselves from the suffering. So that, I think, is a tool, we can really sort of use in any given situation or to solve any issues. So that is one of the core the life skills education that we propagate. And the other one is that we talk in Buddhist philosophy about having the same potential of being enlightened, not only for the humans, but as long as you're a being, you are or have the seed of enlightenment, which equals to compassion or freedom. So on that base, topped with the philosophy of impermanence, can really make you sail through any of the problems that you face in life.
Thank
And
you.
life skills education, as unlike in just being skill education, seems to be just talking on the same line in different languages. Hence, gender equality, domestic violence, all those LGBTQ or SOGIs, let's say. I have had no problem for the fact that taking on life skills education and coming from who I am from the last 15 generations and being able to put myself in a place where, life is how you make of it. And life is how you make of it. And it becomes even more better when you have a philosophy to support your beliefs and thoughts. So in a country like Bhutan, where Buddhism is prevalent, I think it's whether people use the philosophy or logic or try to refrain from it. The solution is not far away. It's all about trying to find the impermanence in the fact that it gives so much hope, because no particular issue or a situation is permanent.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great reflections that we will carry within us as we continue. Our next speaker is Ms. Rosanna Isa, who's the Executive Director of Sisters in Islam. Ms. Isa joined the Malaysian women's rights movement in 1999 to address the challenges that women face in the context of Islamization within a democratic nation with parallel legal systems. So, Ms. Isa, Sisters in Islam is a Malaysian NGO working on women's rights within the framework of Islam, as we said. In particular, you have been working on FGM, female genital mutilation, which in your country is still widely practiced. How do you engage on the issue of FGM in Malaysia from an Islamic perspective? Is FGM a religious issue or is it a cultural one? And how do the two intersect? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katerina, for having me for this session. I will answer the two questions that you asked in the letter regarding whether FGM is a religious issue or cultural one and how do they intersect. FGM, or as the practice is known here in Malaysia, female circumcision, is prevalent among Muslim communities who are also Malay in terms of their ethnicity. So for example, I am a Malay and I am also a Muslim. So given how these identities are connected and intertwined, what I mean is by those who are Malays are Muslims and Muslims are predominantly Malays. Therefore, female circumcision is a practice regarded by the communities as both religious as well as cultural. And more recently, it is also seen as a health reason, with the emphasis given by the community that is to maintain the hygiene of the genitalia of female babies. Aside from that, we engage in this from the perspective of Islamic arguments, because Malaysia also has fatwas, which is a religious edict issued by fatwa committees of the different states in Malaysia. And while the fatwa is a religious opinion, they are not binding unless they have been gazetted. And fatwas that are gazetted have the force of law. Now, for the majority Muslim communities in Malaysia, regardless of whether the fatwa has been gazetted or not, fatwas still have a very strong influence in persuading Muslims to continue or to leave certain practices because the notion of being rewarded for being good Muslims. So we have several kinds of fatwas. 8 states, we actually have 9 fatwas on the issue of female circumcision. 5 actually say it's obligatory. 1 says that there is no basis according to the religious text and the grounds to reduce the female desire is unfounded. And there are 3 other fatwas that say as a practice, it is recommended or permissible. And in terms of the approach, strategies that we use, we engage with relevant agencies and ministries, including religious authorities. We engage with individual religious figures and community leaders.
We engage with women in the communities, both older and young, those who are grandmothers, mothers, and young women who may have been circumcised, as well as young fathers as well. NGOs who address issues related to bodily autonomy, SRHR, the media, as well as programs of action under Beijing, under the ICPD or the International Human Rights Instruments such as CEDAW. And the outcomes of this has been very interesting. For example, engagement with the older generation of women has shifted from the objective of controlling sexuality to the objective of maintaining hygiene of the female baby's genitalia. And again, this is misinformation regarding the practice because there are just no medical benefits, including hygiene, to the practice of circumcision. Now, what's interesting though, is engaging with young fathers. They are the ones who are questioning the practice that is being imposed by their wives' families. And we see that there are actually inroads there to have more of these young fathers raising the questions and raising the practices within the families. In terms of the procedure itself, it is not taught in medical school, yet they are medicalized and practiced in private clinics and hospitals and offered as part of a package along with a baby's delivery or vaccination. And interestingly, doctors have also responded to this practice. Some say, you know, if I don't do it, you know, the parents might just take this practice underground and risk the baby to more unhygienic medical or non-medical practices of removing either doing the pricking or the cutting of the clitoris. And I think what's interesting is that, you know, religious authorities have actually come out to say that, you know, that it is not a religious practice, but it's more a cultural practice. Having said that, they're putting the burden of making the decision onto the parents, which means that, you know, rather than addressing that the state should take on the obligation to take concrete steps to end the practice through laws, policies, and practices in a stipulated time, they're saying, well, you know, it's culture, it will take time, and therefore we hope that this practice will end one day. So that's where our challenge is, because really without the political will by the government, without them spearheading very concrete steps to end this practice, in the meantime, what we need to do is engage more with the community and make sure that there are more creative practices with the use of the language, you know, highlighting what this means. And we can certainly take the example of the Congress Ulama Perempuan from Indonesia, where they use the language on the protection from the harm and cutting of female babies' genitalia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Isa. Let us now welcome Dr. Gamal Saroor, who is a professor of obstetric and gynecology and the director of the International Islamic Center for Population Studies and Research at Al-Azhar University, one of the most prestigious universities for Islamic teaching worldwide. Dr. Saroor, how has Al-Azhar helped promote information, sensitization, and access to family planning in Muslim societies around the world? What changes have you seen due to this engagement, and what challenges did you have to overcome? Dr. Saroor, can you hear us? It looks like he cannot hear us. So I will move on to our next speaker while we try to fix this technical issue. The next speaker is Reverend Dr. Karen Georgia Thompson, General Minister and President of the United Church of Christ. Reverend Thompson is the first woman and the first woman of African descent to serve as a leader of the denomination. Reverend Thompson, the United Church of Christ has long advocated for reproductive justice and bodily autonomy for all, including for protections to safe and legal abortion access. Your General Synod passed a resolution affirming the right of all people to access reproductive health care, including contraception and abortion. And the Synod also affirmed that forced birth is an act of sexual violence, and the choice to have and care for children is a sacred decision which should not be forced on anyone. So, Reverend Thompson, how do SRH and the right to safe and legal abortion fit with your vision of Christianity? And what obstacles have you encountered both within your congregation and externally, and how have you faced them?
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to be present on this occasion. As a Christian denomination, the United Church of Christ continues to support sexual and reproductive health rights and reproductive rights for women. We continue also to affirm the witness around women's rights. In the resolution which you just read, which passed General Synod, it explicitly affirmed the right to reproductive health care and to legal abortion access. We continue to affirm that abortion is a part of health care and should be accessible to all. And as a people of faith, we continue to advocate for women's rights, which have long been an active part of social justice movements around the world. These are matters of justice, love, and faith, and care for each other. Christianity is a religion where love and justice are major tenets of our faith, affirming the tradition of prophetic witness, which is a part of the Hebrew scriptures, which also inform our Christian faith. Studies have shown the long-term adverse effects of unwanted pregnancy on people's lives, pointing to widespread challenges. As we ponder the issue of sexual and reproductive health in context of the ICPD, the reality of adverse effects such as serious physical and mental health challenges, economic hardship, lack of support, and security are things that we ought to consider. The long-term implications of lack of reproductive health have to be front and center for us in these conversations, even as a matter of faith. From a personal standpoint, I think many of the challenges that I have faced, especially as a woman and a woman of color, has been rooted in the ways that the church is still, I think, fueled by patriarchal narratives. This is something that Sally talked about earlier as well. The Bible continues to be weaponized in a way that uses scripture to reinforce the oppression of women. This is true, especially when it comes to the use of scripture to oppress the rights of women, to support narratives that are not life-giving and cause harm to many. As a woman in religious spaces, my voice is sometimes muted, as many are. I am thankful to be in this role as we continue to advocate for women's rights and to provide effective leadership within the church. In the UCC, we continue to provide training around these matters, and I think this is one of the many solutions that is present before us. We have the Our Whole Lives curriculum, which we created collaboratively with the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. Our Whole Lives, together with sexuality and our faith, helps participants make informed and responsible decisions about their relationships, health, and behavior in the context of their faith. It equips participants with accurate, age-appropriate information in 6 subject areas: human development, relationships, personal skills, sexual behavior, sexual health, and society and culture. It provides not only facts about anatomy and human development, but helps participants to clarify their values, build interpersonal skills, and understand the social, emotional, and spiritual aspects of sexuality. So we are not only advocating, but providing and equipping individuals to make the choices that they need to make around their sexual health. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Reverend Thompson. I would like to try again now to bring in Dr. Gamal Serur. Gamal, can you hear us? Can you hear me? I see Dr. Serur connected. He's in, but maybe he cannot hear us. I don't see him on video. In that case, hoping that he'll manage to fix this problem in the meanwhile, I would move on to the second question, and if and when he connects, we can go back to him and ask him the first question as well. Okay, the second question will be the same for all of the panelists, and you will have 2-3 minutes, depending on whether Dr. Srul joins us or not, to answer. The question is, in your opinion, is Buddhism or Islam or Christianity an obstacle to realizing the vision of the ICPD? And how can multi-stakeholders action help to overcome this challenge? So I will bring you in the same order. We can start with Reverend Azar.
Yes, great. Let's talk about religion being an obstacle, but I would never call it an obstacle, but I would rather say it is a key to help us understand each other, a key to connect us in many different ways. And religion should never be put as a limit in many ways, but it's rather a pool full of information, or actually just a tiny part of a community that helps us, that reflects our faith. I think we all believe in the same God, but we all perceive him in different ways, and that's what is quite unique. I think that we think about, like, if we think about it, it's we all have different perspectives. We all have different ways of communicating with God, yet our communication on earth, there's so many different ways, yet we as human beings can always come in a human sense. And I think everyone has their ethical base based on religion. And we continue to learn from each other. And even now in the whole panels before and now, like hearing from different people, from Jews as well as Muslims, as well as Buddhists and so on, like I think, and many others, of course, I think that's already just a reflection on how we are already, like and how they're already working so hard, or like just the ICPD is one way, is already working. And I think that's quite unique. And even here in Palestine, I would say it's just a different interreligious dialogue is quite important, yet not always possible because of religion. Well, not because of religion, but because of politics. Sorry, politics are the reasons that people make their religion, in that sense, politicize their religion and using it against each other. And I think that's the biggest mistake that we can do. And because religion is what isn't for politicians, but it is for us as human beings to have a dialogue or to work with God and to implement his creation on earth. And I don't believe in any kind of religion that that creation, or the creation of God, or that God's love is always looked upon in a different way, yet never in a violent way. And therefore, I'm also thinking about how many people and how many people of different faiths have stood up against what has been happening also in Gaza, thinking about it in a humanitarian way, as it is quite horrible to see that, and it is quite horrible to in any way legitimize that. Well, can we, like, if we think about it, the suffering brings a lot, brings people together a lot. And I think there needs a lot of spaces to talk about the pain and trauma and bring people together. And even the march for peace between Muslim rabbis and Christian faith leaders, and from the Muslim community as well. I think a lot of women rabbis and women pastors from international communities have been here, and that shows how much we stand with each other, and how much that is actually the one way to go. And I think with women, it's much easier to communicate sometimes when it comes to a lot of other, like when you talk about faith and interreligious dialogues. And I think whenever there's it's great to have also interreligious dialogues with men, but that's been happening for 70, 60, or for not 70, but for many, many years. Women have not been able to do that. Or how often do you see a woman talk in an interreligious dialogue or ecumenical gatherings? You rarely see women there, and that's one thing that we need to keep on fighting for. And these are things that, or this is quite a challenge, I would say. Yet it is one thing that would help us overcome any kind of obstacle when we work together, when we listen to each other, just as we did since the whole morning, I would say, for a lot of us.
Thank you, Reverend Azar. I would like now to give the chance to other panelists to answer the same questions. Lama Dorji, you're up next.
Yes, thank you, Katerina. Yeah, actually, as our co-panelists just mentioned, religion cannot be a stumbling block. I think, in fact, having multi-faith is appreciated, because I don't think we can just offer a plate of food that I like and hope and think that everybody enjoys it. So the very fact that there are multi-faith in the country itself is for the cause and the reason for world to be a better place. So I wouldn't say that it's a blocking, there's an obstacle, but then at the same time, I think we do need to sort of look into the philosophy in a deeper sense and not interpret to our advantage. The error seems to be more of a human-made than the scripture, the original scripture itself. So I think for all faith leaders, especially, it's very important to sort of not bring in our own, perspective or our own interpretations, but rather try to understand what it really means to say or guide. And here in Bhutan, there are many religious events whereby we can sort of try to talk to people or to convey to the people as to what's happening and what may happen, for the fact that believing in karma or Newton's third law, there's always equal and opposite action, reaction to an action. So there's no way of escaping. And even if we use religion or our own ideas trying to escape the reaction of the action that we committed, I think it simply wouldn't work, because that probably would be distorting the fact that we all believe in, which is science, right? So the truth, should science stand to find truth? I think we in Buddhism do the same, but without technologies. So I think there's a lot of commonalities that we can go hand in hand with. And I'm also involved in organizing science workshop for the monastics, and we have done over 6 workshops so far. And we have found that both science and Buddhism can go hand in hand, meaning both are seeking truth. And also we try to just sort of...
Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I have to jump in. I want to also give the floor to Ms. Isa and Reverend Thompson. And I just heard from Dr. Sarur, who might be able to call into this Zoom meeting. So hopefully that will happen. Rosanna, you're next.
Thank you very much. I think the challenge that we're all facing right now is the fact that, anti-rights actors are the ones making religion an obstacle to us having a better interpretation of religious texts that meets the realities of women in the 21st century. And again, I'm bringing in the Congress Ulama Perempuan Indonesia, because since their advent or their establishment in 2017, they have come out with fatwas, effectively fatwas, that support the emancipation and liberation of women in terms of their sexual and reproductive health and rights and other aspects as well. you know, on the issue of sexual violence, child marriage, on the issue of female genital mutilation and cutting. So I think rather than there being, yes, it is a challenge in one way, but it is also an opportunity, as the Congress Ulama Perempuan Indonesia has shown us. And I think that is the way forward for us to ensure that more of this enlightened and more open interpretations meet with the people on the ground, that people on the ground are getting those kinds of perspectives and views. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Reverend Thompson.
Christianity ought not to be an obstacle to any of the issues that we're talking about here, and certainly in realizing the vision of the ICPD. Unfortunately, when we talk about Christianity or any other religion, we're talking about a multiplicity of views, interpretations of text, and interpretation of doctrine. So in some cases, while it should not be, it actually is. And I think in this context, it's some of the things that we've already talked about, which is use of scripture, weaponizing of the Bible. And I think as we've seen most recently, the use of scripture as a way of interfering with the rights of individuals and providing, I think, ways that are problematic for people's flourishing. That being said, I think that Christianity is a primary stakeholder and should be a primary stakeholder when we're talking about the implementation of the ICPD. That it is important for faith communities to be an active part of advocacy, to ensuring that women's rights are available, to making sure that communities of faith, houses of worship, are safe spaces for people to show up. It used to be that once upon a time, our churches were experienced as sanctuaries, meaning if an individual had a problem, they could go to the church and seek help. And I think that we ought to continue to be that. And there are ways that the church can continue to show up around issues of sexual and reproductive health, which includes access to abortions and contraceptives. We should not be obstacles. If we don't support it, we ought not to be speaking out against it in a way that deprives an individual of their rights. If we are going to live and see the possibilities for women that were envisioned at the adoption of the ICPD 30 years ago, the religious community has to be seen as a key stakeholder in promoting and advocating for individual dignity and human rights, including the right to plan one's family. At the same time, where religious communities are a part of the problem, ways have to be found to assist those who are being harmed by toxic theologies and toxic religiosity. And I think in that, we have to be willing to continue to educate and advocate even within the church so that awareness is raised around these issues, and those who can be better advocates will be better advocates on these issues and for these rights.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all of our panelists. So the last, one of the important things that I heard just now from you, Reverend Thompson, is that how faith, well, you said Christianity, you were speaking for your own faith, but I think it applies to all faith traditions, how they are important, how they are an important part of the ICPD agenda, and how key it is to see that communities of faith are safe spaces, how it is important for these communities to be safe spaces. So I think in this, I do hope that in this conversation, we did all feel very much that this is a safe space for sharing and for learning. And I would like to thank all of our panelists for coming together and opening up and not shying away from sharing also the challenges and the work that you do to advance all of these issues. I regret that Dr. Gamal was not able to join us for technical problems, but I would like now to maybe just try to sum up some of the sentences that spoke the most to me that were said today. And I put them not in the order in which they were said, but like to have a narrative of their own. So the first thing said by, which was brought to our attention by Ms. Isa, is that anti-rights actors are the ones making religion an obstacle. So that really stuck to me. And then that brought to my mind what Reverend Thompson said, that the church is filled with patriarchal narrative and that scripture, how scriptures are weaponized to reinforce the oppression of women. At the same time, Reverend Lama Dorji reminded us that we are the ones not interpreting the scriptures to our advantage, and that errors in interpretation are human-made and they're not in the scripture themselves. Therefore, I would like to add, we have a role to play in how we interpret and disseminate these learnings, teachings. Reverend Azar said that religion cannot be an obstacle, should not be an obstacle, but rather a key. So we're seeing how the same thing can be perceived as an instrument of oppression, as an obstacle, or it is in our power to turn it, flip the coin and see it as a tool for advancement of humanity. And last but not least, again, Lama Dorji reminded us how multi-faith dialogue and bringing together different faith perspectives is really key. And if I'm not mistaken, he used the food analogy, which as an Italian resounds very much with me, that we cannot have only one dish that I like and present it to everyone as the only alternative. I did like that. So thank you again. I do hope that the insight that you were willing to share with us today contribute to the understanding that that faith is not a monolith, and that we should indeed work together to expand the base of supporters of the ICPD agenda. So now we will take another 5 minutes break. Actually 3 minutes, because we're running a little bit behind, and we reconvene for our third session at 10:50. Actually, sorry, we have plenty of time. We have 6 minutes. So we reconvene at 10:50 here, and enjoy your break. Thank you all.
Welcome back. I hope everybody had a good stretch, and a warm welcome to everyone who has joined us for our exciting third session. While we are marking an anniversary today, we have had the opportunity to look back, and we also thought it was critical in this particular space to also look forward and have a dialogue on how we can shape the future for gender justice. Now, we have a brilliant team of youth representatives who have been working together to design the next session. And so it is with tremendous pleasure that I get to introduce two co-moderators for this exciting session. Adriana Sosa is a young woman activist born and currently living in Haiti. She has been a board member of the World YMCA since 2019 and is currently serving a second term representing the region of the Caribbean. For the past 3 years, she has been committed to peace building and community development, working at a grassroots level as a project coordinator at the YWCA Haiti. Aisha Wasi is a young Rwandan feminist, an advocate of women and girls' rights, with 5 years experience of working with non-government organizations, mainly in the gender equality, including sexual reproductive health projects. She is a mass media content creator and host of a radio talk show that talks about HIV prevention and response for young people. So I'm going to hand this over to you, Adriana and Aisha, for the next session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Diana, and hello, everyone. Welcome to the third session of today's event, where we will be listening to young people of faith and how they are shaping the future for gender justice. I'm Adriana, and I'm happy to be co-moderating with Aisha. We thank you. We thank you all for being here with us, as it has already been a very productive morning and evening for some of you. So we invite you to quickly take a few breaths with us, grab a quick cup of tea or coffee before we begin this conversation. So to give a bit of background, less than 2 months ago, more than 400 young people from 130 countries made their voices heard at the ICPD 30 Youth Dialogue, organized by UNFPA in Benin. During this event, youth delegates called for concrete, decisive action on issues of importance to them, such as sexual and reproductive health and rights, education, human rights, and gender equality, among others. Today, we will hear from the experiences of 4 young leaders of faith who have fearlessly been making their voices heard in their communities. Throughout the session, please submit your questions using the Q&A function on the chat. We will forward it to the panelists, and hopefully they will have time to answer them in the last few minutes. But before hearing from them, we wanted to quickly check in with everyone who's here with us. So as I've said, we've had a very productive morning listening to reflections about the ICPD agenda, its history, and also listening to faith actors and how they are building bridges. So we quickly want to check in with everyone and how you're feeling about this event, about the ICPD agenda. So we're going to do a quick activity, and I invite you all to click on the Mentimeter link, which is shared in the chat box if you want to participate in this activity. Should you have any technical issues accessing the link, feel free to participate through the chat box. So the word for today is motivation, and you will be given 1 letter at a time from the word motivation, for which you have to write out a word starting with that letter on how you're feeling right now. So for example, our first letter is M, and I'm feeling mindful. So you have 20 seconds for this first letter, and I will be timekeeping this on my phone. Okay, so we have someone saying that they feel mentored. So you have to submit in a word describing how you're feeling using the letter M. You may click on the Mentimeter link or submit it through the chat box. We have motivated. All right, time is up for this letter. We're gonna move on to letter O, and hopefully more people will have had access to the link. You have 10 seconds for O. Oh my. Yeah, there's a bit of pressure. Do we have anyone feeling optimistic? Yes, I see thumbs up. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the third letter of the word, which is T. We have tracking. Thank you, Christine. We have thankful. Okay. Our fourth letter is I. Please go ahead and submit your words. You can use the chat box if it's easier, or for those of you who have accessed the link, you can use the Mentimeter. We have innovation, inspired. Definitely, I'm feeling very inspired as well. Informed. Super. Our fifth letter is V. V is kind of a hard one. Okay, and for those of you who are multilingual, also feel free to write in words in different languages. Valuable, I love that one. Thank you, Aliyah. Vast, yes. Validated, definitely. We're gonna move on to letter A, which is our sixth letter. Achievable. Yes, I do believe the ICPD agenda is achievable. Adaptable. Yes. Advised. Great. Now we have a T again. Friends, I'm feeling touched. I'm feeling touched by our actors of faith and their contributions. We have people feeling trusted, people that are thinking, people that feel thought. Super. And now we have an I again. Informed. Yes, this is a very informative session. Innovative as well. Impressed. Okay, now we're moving on to O. This is our second O. Optimistic. Definitely. Onward. We are definitely moving onward and looking forward to the next 30 years to come. Okay, and our final letter is N. Noted. Narrative. Narratives play a big part in the work that we're doing, that is certain. Networked. Yes. Super. Thank you, everyone that has participated in this activity. It's safe to say that we are all motivated today and determined to push the ICPD agenda forward. If you all agree, please drop a big thumbs up in the chat box. Thank you. And now I'm going to hand it over to Aisha to guide us through the following parts.
Wow. Feels so great to celebrate something that has been adopted before some of us are even born. This is a very great session, and people was born 30 years after this. We are being meaningfully involved and contribute to the beauty of it. And clearing the path for ourselves and for the generations comes after us. The 2024 marks 30 years of adoption of the International Conference on Population and Development Program of Action. Most of us were not yet born, those who are on this panel, but it is a pleasure to be sharing our contributions, our recommendations, our insights today. And I'm so happy to welcome our first speaker, who is Nema Nyaundi, joining us from Kenya, where she's a young women champion under the Young Women for Awareness, Agents, Advocacy and Accountability, YW4A, a worldwide WCL-led consortium implemented initiative that is being facilitated to young people to achieve leadership and influence the legal, policy, social norms change to eliminate SGBV. NEMA's ambition is to create a gender equality community that embraces the spirit of personal development in realization of gender equality. Welcome, NEMA.
Hello, Aisha. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Yeah, as you heard, my name is Nema Nyaundi, a young woman in the YW4A program. So YW4A program is a program that seeks to harness young women's power so that they can be able to advocate for their rights.
Yes, welcome, Nema. So Nema, reflecting on the outcomes of the ICPD 30 Youth Global Dialogue that Adrian was sharing and the work that you're doing through YW4A program, what critical improvements are needed to make SRHR, including, of course, anti-SGBV services, more responsive to young people's needs? Over to you, Nema.
Thank you, Aisha. Yeah, so as to enhance SRHR and anti-GBV services for young women, there are quite a number of things that are, or rather strategies that we need to adopt. Number one is to ensure that we have youth-friendly services and services that are easily accessible to the youth. When talking about youth-friendly services, we mean services that we offer services to the youth and you're not supposed to be judgmental to us. For example, when a young woman or a young person wants to get services from, it can be maybe someone has gone to deliver. In most aspects, you'll find that the service providers get to abusers. So we need to get services that are friendly so that we can be able to access those services. We can go to access those services at any time. Number two is to use a holistic and multisectoral approach. When coming up with policies or any other initiative, we need to get everyone on board, including the faith actors, the duty bearers, and us as the youth. Because in most cases, you find that we have programs that are meant for the youth, but when you are conducting a needs assessment or developing a implementation matrix, you don't get to involve us, the youth. And then number three, ensure there is data protection. Ain't that I've come to seek SRHR services and then the following day I'm seeing my name all over. Nema came yesterday to seek these services. Yeah, so you need to assure that there is data protection of the services that we've come to seek. And then another thing is the involvement of youth in conducting needs assessment. I think I've talked about that. And then capacity building of the youth. It can be in terms of empowering them on how they can advocate for their rights. It can be engaging them in international forums. and making them or maybe involving them in fellowships where they can get to be enlightened more. Thank you, Aisha.
Thank you so much, Nema. I loved the ensuring the confidentiality. Young people, we love confidentiality. We don't want our things to be out there. Let's welcome our second speaker, Nanayo Tira, who is joining us from Zimbabwe, and he works with charity and education as a charity and education officer at Strucci Foundation in Mozambique, and his work primarily emphasizes on youth-led initiative. Welcome, Ninayo.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all esteemed colleagues connected in this platform. Thank you for the opportunity to reflect together in this important subject. I mean, in this important event.
Yeah. Nanayo, reflecting on your experience with education programs, focusing, of course, on youth-led initiative in Mozambique, how can this achievement be leveraged further to expand the comprehensive sexuality education and the information on SRHR effectively, reaching more young people, of course? And what do you think can be the role of faith actors in this?
Considering my experience with education programs centered on youth-led initiatives in Mozambique, I'm very excited by the remarkable process we are making in empowering young people, as I also went through the same progress one day. These achievements are a testimony to a potential and resilience of youth, and has a way of achieving even greater success and expanding comprehensive sexuality education and information on sexual reproductive health and rights. A multifaceted approach is needed. Firstly, it's important to build on the accessible education models, which has already proven to be very effective. This is because young people engage with and respond positively to information, let's say, respond positively to information provided in an accessible way. And by training and mobilizing more young leaders, we can expand the reach of these programs, ensuring that accurate and relevant SRHR information reaches a larger audience. It's essential to promote partnership with local communities, schools, and health facilities. This collaboration can help integrate SRHR education into existing structures, as was mentioned by one of the speakers, and ensuring sustainability and more extensive reach. In 2022, Strucci Foundation Mozambique started a reusable sanitary pads project, which focused on underprivileged children and teenagers. The objective is to provide a practical and economical solution for menstrual hygiene, thereby ensuring that teenagers are not limited on going to school because of a natural and simple to resolve factors. By providing reusable pads, we not only offer a sustainable solution, but also ensure that future leaders emerge from it. And these future leaders can guarantee accessible information and the well-being of the next generation. Besides, Strucci has been training youth to study abroad, and we expect that these individual youth will bring more experience, information, and ideas on how to make topics like sexual and reproductive health and rights more accessible to other youth. Furthermore, it's crucial to take advantage of technology. In today's digital world, online platforms and social networks can play an important role in spreading information. And by developing attractive and accessible digital content, we can reach young people even in the most remote areas. Religious leaders also play a very important role in this objective. In many communities, religious leaders are highly respected and very influential. By involving these leaders in promoting SRHR, we can break down cultural and religious barriers, promoting a more favorable environment for young people. And religion actors can help disseminate accurate information and advocate for importance of comprehensive sexuality education, ensuring that it aligns with the values and beliefs of the community. In conclusion, by empowering young leaders, promoting community partnerships, leveraging technology, and involving religious leaders, we can significantly expand comprehensive education, sexual education, and SRHR information in Mozambique and in Africa. And together we can create an environment where all young people can have the necessary information and resource to make conscious and confident decisions about their health and their future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nanayo, for those critical insights. I loved developing something attractive and accessible for young people. That's so nice to hear. And you never know, we are here today celebrating what happened 30 years ago. Maybe what we are giving today will be celebrated 30 years to come. Over to you, Adrienne, with our next speakers.
Thank you, Aisha. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our third speaker, Samin Lofty, a professional in education, women's health, and human rights. She has an educational background in international and community development, health, and education. She has facilitated programs for women and men on SRHR, gender-based violence, and human rights.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for being here with us. Samin, you being an advocate for human rights and gender equality means that you have often been confronted with resistance. So encountering anti-rights and anti-gender movements, how can faith and development actors sustain and expand efforts to promote a rights-based approach to sexual and reproductive health and bodily integrity, integrating lessons from successful initiatives that you have done?
Thank you so much. So as was said before, my name is Samin Lotfi, and I'm coming from the Baha'i community in South Africa. So in order to answer this question, and coming from a Baha'i standpoint, we all have to realize the inherent unity and equality of all people. So once we understand this, the rights and dignity of all will be better understood and achieved. As Baha'is, the pivot around we operate is centered on the principle of unity and oneness. So every individual is an integral part of the whole of society, and all have the potential to contribute to the betterment of their communities. And as people of faith, like was shared in this really wonderful panel, I've learned a lot today. But as people of faith, we know the importance of our belief system. And to have faith, but to have faith is not merely to know what is good and right. So true faith is conscious knowledge that is expressed in action. So to know this principle of oneness is actually not enough. We must continue to advance our understanding of the world around us and to put that understanding into action. So alongside this principle of oneness, I would like to highlight two other principles in the Baha'i faith. Firstly, the equality of men and women, and second, the harmony between science and religion. So by understanding and acting on these principles, we realize the importance of the role of women in society in every aspect. She is a contributor in equal status to men in all dimensions of existence. This is a spiritual truth as we know it. Naturally then, if we are equal to the other, we do not allow barriers to her contribution to the community or to society, or impede her health needs and well-being. This includes the importance of her sexual and reproductive health and rights, and her bodily integrity. So the role of science in bringing to light what we need for our health in our bodies and to prevent illness is known. This is a fact, right? So therefore, we must harmonize religious truth and scientific knowledge in order to address gender equality and health in its entirety. So based on my own experience and from the Baha'is who are engaged in this work worldwide, the way we see understanding advance in regards to these principles is through education. So education for men and women alike will be the gateway through which all members of society can advance. The doors that were previously closed from women in education and opportunity must be opened, and the willingness of men to educate themselves of its importance must go hand in hand. This education is not limited to the schooling system. Instead, we must continue to be in a mode of learning where in any moment we are actively engaged in advancing our conscious knowledge. And of course, this will then inform our action. So when it comes to our sexual and reproductive health and rights being understood and achieved, it is through this power of education and the ability to have a conversation that is open, direct, and consultative. So nothing can be achieved if we don't actually talk about it. So the power of a conversation is basic. Actually, the act of a conversation seems like it's basic, but the most important capacity is to learn to have these difficult conversations. So even though it's simple, it actually has a profound effect and the most powerful conversation is that expands the mind and it also touches the heart. I think I'm running a little bit out of time, but I wanted to focus that, within the family home, within your community, when the conversations are happening within the nation or among nations, this is important to have these conversations that are direct. So I've worked also in the non-governmental space, and like was mentioned in the bio, that I've had experience facilitating workshops for men and women. And I find those spaces for men and women are actually the most conducive to address sexual and reproductive health because we're confronted with difficult conversations. So it's a space that's open, but it's also, there's a necessary tension that goes into having these conversations. And through conversation after conversation, that's how we start to unpack some of these inequalities. So we can't unpack an inequality until we start to understand it. And so I found that through ongoing discussions, by asking questions that get to the root of the issue and a sincere willingness to understand it, it's possible to reframe how we perceive each other. And I wanted to also describe in the Baha'i space, we have an institute process that the purpose of this process is to develop our own understanding, but also to develop the capacity, skills, and knowledge to put this into practice. And it starts in the space of a study circle. And this study space has men and women. And so when you're having conversations that are of significance, naturally, we start to realize the value that each individual has to play, both men and women. And slowly we start to see these prejudices that we previously had start to slip away. And so I wanted to just note that, I just wanted to end with this quotation from the Baha'i writings that puts this into just this last point, that until the reality of equality between man and woman is fully established and attained, the highest social development of mankind is not possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samin, for your inspiring remarks and for sharing with us a bit about the Baha'i culture and the Baha'i beliefs. I personally took so many notes about what you said, and a few things that stuck out with me are how you talked about unity and equality of all people. So the concept of oneness. And at the Worldwide WCA, we have a saying that if one of us is suffering, then all of us are suffering. And I think that depicts that concept. You've talked also about the harmony of science and religion, and also about true faith also has to do with taking action. And I think that when we talk about faith, action is always a very silent word. And so you bringing this up is so important, and it just sheds even more light on this whole event about faith actors leading change in the faith communities. So thank you so much, Samin.
Thank you so much.
This brings me to Yao. Yao is our fourth speaker. And Yao Amega is a young Togolese with a background in sociology, specializing in health and development. He is actively involved in the fight against gender-based violence and is dedicated to fighting stigma and discrimination against people living with HIV by combating HIV-related misinformation and self-stigmatization. Hello, Yao. Alors, bonjour, Yao.
Hello, Adriana. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to have joined this activity, not only to learn more, but also to objectify and better contextualize my next intervention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yao. We're happy to have you with us. So, in combating gender-based violence and HIV-related stigma, how can faith-based organizations and young people harness advancements in AI and technology to improve access to sexual and reproductive health and rights services and information while aligning with their religious and ethical values?
Thank you, Adriana. Please let me continue in French. Okay. Dans la lutte,
let me just
have to
make
say
a note.
something?
Yes, for those who have not yet connected to an interpretation channel, please do so. Yao will be speaking in his native language, which is French. Thank you. On to you, Yao.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Adriana. Pour répondre à la question, je dirais dans la lutte contre les violences basées sur le genre et la lutte contre la stigmatisation liée au VIH, les organisations professionnelles et les jeunes peuvent exploiter les progrès de l'intelligence artificielle ou de la technologie en globalité de plusieurs manières tout en respectant les valeurs religieuses et éthiques. On peut utiliser la technologie et l'IA, les intelligences artificielles, dans 5 axes d'intérêt sans s'y limiter. Le premier point, c'est au niveau de la sensibilisation, l'éducation et la formation. Nous pouvons utiliser les chatbots ou bien les intelligences artificielles pour fournir des informations sur la santé sexuelle et reproductive de manière confidentielle, accessible à tout moment. Par exemple, si j'ai besoin d'avoir assez d'informations tout de suite sur la masculinité positive, je me réfère juste à une conversation avec une intelligence artificielle qui me donne assez de données. Je tiens à préciser qu'en posant ces questions à l'intelligence artificielle, il faudra qu'on souligne la source. Après la question, qu'on demande à l'intelligence artificielle de sourcer les informations qu'il nous fournira. À part ça, la technologie nous aide à créer des applications mobiles ou des sites web, des pages multilinguistes qui diffusent des messages de prévention, d'éducation sur la violence sexuelle et sur le VIH. Par exemple, il y a des jeunes Maliens qui ont développé des logiciels, une application et un site web qui s'appelle Hello Ado, où ils sensibilisent sur les violences basées sur les genres. Le thème courant, c'est surtout sur l'hygiène menstruelle et les relations entre hommes et femmes. Il y a des amis togolais qui ont aussi développé une plateforme qui se nomme Santé 360, où ils sensibilisent toute la population sur la santé en général, plus précisément sur la riposte contre le VIH. En deuxième point, il y a l'accès aux services. La technologie nous aide à développer des plateformes en ligne pour faciliter la mise en relation avec des professionnels de la santé, des conseillers, des centres de dépistage. Par exemple, si on prend au niveau des États-Unis ou bien de l'Europe, il y a le SAMU qui a des conseillers, des téléconseillers qui conseillent souvent quand vous appelez pour prendre des conseils ou bien pour dénoncer un besoin spécifique. chez nous au Togo, il y a l'info santé, c'est une ligne verte qui est disponible pour toute la population où vous pouvez appeler pour avoir des informations sur une infection spécifique ou bien sur la santé sexuelle reproductive en globalité. On peut toujours utiliser l'intelligence artificielle pour tirer et acheminer les demandes d'aide vers les ressources appropriées. Par exemple, s'il y a un cas d'abus, il y a un cas de violence sexuelle, on peut utiliser les intelligences artificielles pour avoir des ressources par rapport à la prise en charge adéquate qu'il est nécessaire par rapport à chaque cas. À part ça, nous pouvons utiliser l'intelligence artificielle pour la prévention et l'intervention. Utiliser l'intelligence artificielle pour détecter des discours haineux en ligne et promouvoir des messages positifs. Créer des chatbots ou bien des discussions de soutien émotionnel pour les survivants des violences basées sur le genre. Par rapport à la formation, nous pouvons utiliser la technologie pour améliorer ou bien renforcer les capacités. Souvent, les leaders religieux francophones du réseau Faith2Action se réunissent souvent périodiquement pour parler, discuter des thématiques variées, ce que je salue de passage. La fois dernière, ils ont organisé encore cette session pour parler de la fistule obstétricale où j'ai eu l'occasion de participer, ce qui a été fédérateur, ce qui a fédéré, qui est qualitatif. Comme vous le savez, toute chose sous le soleil n'a jamais été parfaite. L'intelligence artificielle ou bien la technologie en globalité a des défis, dont trois principaux. Le premier, c'est la maîtrise. Le premier, c'est la maîtrise. Là, en second point, il y a l'accessibilité. Et en dernier point, il y a le garantie des données personnelles, des informations privées. Mais à part ces trois défis, l'intelligence artificielle ou la technologie peut être un puissant atout pour améliorer l'accès aux services et informations sur la santé sexuelle reproductive ou bien dans la riposte contre le VIH, la stigmatisation liée au VIH, tout en respectant les valeurs religieuses et éthiques lorsque nous l'utilisons de manière réfléchie et inclusive. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Yao, pour tes commentaires. C'était super. Thank you for shedding light on the possibilities of AI when it comes to integrating it to improve sexual and reproductive health services. I especially like that you pointed out how it serves in terms of various languages, how we can use chat box in education and bringing awareness, and how AI in general can help in platforms of communication. Also, everything under the sun is not perfect. There are definitely downsides, but there is also the possibility for it to be leveraged for positive impact. So thank you, Yao. Now we have one final question for all of our panelists, and this is a quick question, so you all have just 1 minute to answer. And this question is, based on your advocacy journey so far, what are the most valuable lessons that you've learned that you would like to share with other young people wanting to make a difference? I think we can start with Nima.
Hello. Yeah, so
Yes, we hear you, Nima.
yeah, based on my advocacy journey, one thing I can, or some few things I can share is we as the youth, we are the change that we want to see. We just need to leverage on the available resources. It can be technology, it can be organizations that are capacity building us to advocate for our rights. It's not necessarily to wait on funding or any other resources that is not at our disposal. We just need to leverage on available resources to advocate for our rights.
Great. Thank you, Nima. Now on to Nanayo.
Uh, I would say, we young people, we are very lucky, because we're born in a world where we have a very large world of technology, and there are many things we can do with the technology. There are many things we can improve through technology. So I think we should, as a young people, we should put the hands together and see what we have in the community, and through technology, we can and try to bring the solutions that can relieve the suffer or the difficult that the community is facing. I mean, unlike times before, the technology has been growing and growing, and even the remote areas, there are also the technology is reaching there. So I believe that we can make a good use of that on introducing, but at the same time taking an advantage to bring good results through technology.
I agree. Thank you, Nanayo. Samin, would you like to jump in?
Sure, yeah. So, the period of youth is a very short time in one's life, but it's the most significant time in one's life. And I think that any issue or any enterprise or social change has to have youth at the forefront. And from the lessons I've learned over the last however many years, there are a few. So I would say that every community has particular needs. They have particular issues. And I think youth can identify what these issues are. I think it's always helpful to have a group of people or people who share in the purpose of addressing those needs. So find people who are also, on this journey or on this path with you, and take steps to address it. So even if these steps are small, it doesn't really matter. As long as they're regular and they're consistent, they actually have the power to make great impact. And whatever step we take, it's not going to be the perfect step, but we have to take it. And in order to do so, and in order to refine those steps, I would say, we have to act. And when we act, we'll see where the need is to refine our action. We have to study, we have to develop our knowledge base. We have to, consult with people on the way. But we also have to be supported, so to find a support system. And then we repeat the process over and over again, because we know that change is not going to happen after one big, beautiful event. It's actually going to take sustained action over a long period of time. So just do what you have to do, essentially.
Thank you. We're going to get there, even if it's baby steps.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. On to you, Yao.
Ok, thank you. Merci beaucoup. En s'appuyant sur mes expériences personnelles, j'ai compris qu'un bon engagement doit être objectif par deux mécanismes. Le premier, c'est le mentorat et la péréducation. Le mentorat permet à nous, jeunes, d'apprendre et de capitaliser sur les interventions des aînés qui se sont aussi engagés pour les mêmes causes afin d'innover dans nos engagements. En seconde position, il y a la péréducation qui consiste en effet à fédérer de bonnes relations et le partage d'expériences entre nous jeunes, comme nous le faisons dans cette activité précisément. Pour finir, le changement prend du temps. Persévérons malgré les obstacles. Travaillons en synergie, l'union fait la force. Écoutons les communautés concernées. Je ne peux pas m'engager pour le droit des femmes et ne pas savoir ce dont la communauté a vraiment besoin. Donc, écoutons les communautés concernées, leurs voix sont essentielles. Soyons créatifs dans nos approches. La technologie peut être un atout. Prenons soin de nous. Le plaidoyer peut être épuisant, mais notre bien-être compte aussi. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Yao. Au fait, l'union fait la force. C'est la devise de mon pays. Alors, ça me va droit au cœur.
Là, c'est bien.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I'm going to hand it over to Aisha. Aisha, you can take us through the Q&A and share some reflections.
Thank you so much. This was very insightful, encouraging, and motivating conversation with young people. You're welcome to share your Q&A. I'm not seeing any now, but as you're writing your questions, if you have any, I would like to reflect on what we have been sharing with our great panelists, our leaders of today, tomorrow, and I don't know, maybe in our old ages. The first thing as a takeaway, youth, we are the change we want to see. We can make the changes that we want to see. And we have a world of technology, and through technology, we can bring solutions to difficulties that our communities are facing. And I love that the period of youth is very short but significant. So every community, as if it has its own needs and its own issues, whatever we are passing through, the people who are passing through it are the ones who can even bring solutions. And those people are youth. And we don't have to get tired. You have to repeat the process over and over again because change takes time, and we need mentoring and education as engagement ways of achieving the change we want to see. Thank you, guys. I'm not seeing any question yet. This was a very great and very well insightful sharing with you. Thank you so much, our panelists, and over to you again, Adrienne, as we are closing our panel.
Thank you, Aisha. I agree with you. There are so many insightful reflections to take away. And I think it's great that UNFPA and all partners have made this possible so that we can have this peer exchange. And I hope that there will be many more dialogues to come. I just want to say thank you to Nima, Nanayo, Samin, and Yao. Thank you for all your inspiring remarks and contributions. And thank you to everyone who has been here with us for this session. Now the third session is officially over, and back to you, Diana.
Wow. You all just took my breath away. Thank you, Adriana, Aisha, your team, for sharing how we can and already are shaping the future. My heart is so full. We have heard a lot over the last 3 hours, and we are now going to invite 3 people to be respondents to the session and share some of the highlights. So we have Albert Barsakayan and Dilpreet Kaur-Bains, who are representing the Sikh Human Rights Group. Albert is their representative in the United Nations in New York and Geneva. And he is also in the executive of the NGO Committee for Social Development. Dilpreet represented the Sikh community on the renowned Interfaith Allen Sennett Community Leadership Program, enabling her to learn about different faiths and cultures whilst reflecting and gaining leadership skills to serve the wider community. Commissioner Christine McMillan first began as the founding director of the Salvation Army International Social Justice Commission after her time spent as a Salvation Army officer. Commissioner McMillan now serves as the chair of MICA Global and works as a senior advisor to the World Evangelical Alliance to the United Nations. The floor is yours, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Diana, and thank you everyone who has been here with us for 3 hours and counting. The relationship between the ISPD and the faith communities has been a very challenging one. And I think it was very good today to see the differences different faith communities are bringing to this debate. For me personally, this event was a way also to demystify what faith communities have to say about ISPD. We have seen very much support for the ISPD action, and especially the Chapter 4 on women empowerment. During the ISPD negotiations in Cairo back in 1994, during these 30 years, but also going forward. We have seen that there was a lot of conspiracy theories around ICPD in the initial years of the conference. It was in 90s that the idea of the ICPD was to reduce the population. But this is something that we are not hearing that much now. So this is the first success that we can already see. We saw also from the various faith actors that ICPD has been included into their work, and that faith actors are seeing ICPD implementation as part of the work that they are doing both directly and indirectly. Directly because many faith actors are having their own hospitals, their own health facilities, and they are the first providers of the sexual and reproductive health services in places that there is no any other provider who is going to provide, especially in remote areas, you can think, because faith actors by definition are not driven by the economic benefits. They are not also driven by the political considerations. They are really driven by serving their own communities. But also indirectly, we could see that faith actors are involved in the implementation of ICPD in the other way. They are the ones who are also very influential in the communities. It was mentioned by many faith representatives that in difficult political, social, economic contexts, faith representatives are perhaps the most influential ones, and they can actually use this influence for bad or for good. So in this conversation, we saw that many faith actors wanted to use their influence to actually push for the ICPD implementation, and it's very important. The other panel session representatives talked about newly emerged problems, and this is something that we can see going forward for ICPD 30+, and what is the role of ICPD in the future, like data protection, youth engagement in international platforms, or reusable paths. And this is something which is talking to me very closely as Human Rights Group, because we are lobbying in the UN for the coalition against pink tax, tax which is actually put on the menstrual products. And hopefully we want to have eco-friendly, but also economically friendly menstrual products. Also, the other question about harmonizing religious truth with the scientific proof, and I think this is where we are very important as the linkages. The use of AI and chat boxes, it was already mentioned, it was very, very, very interesting, which can actually inform people about their choices. And also sustained action. We need to have a sustained action, and we need to be involved in these processes. From Sikh perspective, we are also believing the same one resides in all, encompassing every life form, every ethnicity, every gender, every comb, every race. And this profound understanding is very important in this conversation, because if one is in everything, there is no justification of gender-based injustice. And this is recognizing the profound importance of women and their societal and spiritual role. Over to you, Dilpreet.
Hi, everyone. Earlier, it was mentioned that religion shapes values and attitudes. Faith organizations are crucial to promote the ICPD agenda to the local level in a community context. Faith organizations are key providers on services in human rights settings, education, such as sexual and reproductive health. Throughout today's session, I've heard the significance of making places of worship safe spaces where women can show up in need of help and aid. Communities of faith are safe spaces for sharing and learning. In Sikhi, there is a teaching of seva, which is selfless service. Seva involves acting selflessly and helping others in a variety of ways without any reward or personal gain. It is a way of life for many Sikhs, and it is part of their daily routine. Sikhi teaches that seva is an act of service towards Vaheguru, also known as God, and therefore must be done regularly in order for Sikhs to become one with God. Seva is performed in a variety of ways, such as helping the local community. Also, it was mentioned that religious scriptures and texts have been weaponized. The Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji is a collation of many hymns, poems, and other writings from different scholars. The Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji is not just the holy scripture of Sikhi, it is also considered as the living and eternal Guru. Therefore, Sikhs believe that it should be treated the same way the human gurus were treated. Also, I would like to talk about the importance of women in Sikhi. Women have had very important positions in Sikh history. We are only about 550 years old faith system and had 10 gurus, one after the other. During the period of the gurus, about 40% of priests were women. Women have been generals, administrators, rulers, and even political negotiators among Sikhs. We have gender-neutral first names, which highlights how Sikhi is working towards gender equality. I just wanted to say thank you so much for allowing myself to join this amazing session. I've really enjoyed it and taken a lot on, especially with the AI chatbot. I particularly have an interest in technology, so that has been really interesting to hear about. Thank you so much.
Well, it's good to be with you, calling in from Canada, my home country. And I think part of our contribution is understanding our own cultural nuances. I am part of the World Evangelical Alliance, which is representative of 600 million evangelicals around the world, both regionally, nationally, with a women's commission that is challenging gender inequality. And as I think about our day today, I've been challenged that aspirational ideals are never enough. The WEA, World Evangelical Alliance, talks about the fullness of life for every person, a healthy faith community for every people, the peace of God in every nation. And why that challenges me, those words, I serve on the Multi-Faith Advisory Council, and from that, the Gender Working Committee. And part of our work, which I believe leads up to today, was creating a set of questions for ourselves as the Multi-Faith Advisory Council. We on this call are people who are behind these ideals, but we reflect and we represent a whole constituency. And how do we go to work in our own worlds of influence? I believe that those questions that we passed on to one another were a lot harder to answer or to seek out than our conversation together even today. Now, we're celebrating an anniversary of 30 years, and I'm conscious that the young people's panel probably weren't even born. What progress have we made? Have we heard and felt and sensed the seeds from 1994 that have grown? Well, there was a recording in 1994 that there was a massive earthquake and 57 people died. Today, a massive earthquake leads to thousands of deaths. There was an announcement in 94 that the Church of England ordained 32 priests. Today, we've seen on our call many people who would be considered ordained, not just by position, but by the voice that they exercise through their position. Nelson Mandela in 94 was sworn in as the first South African Black Prime Minister. All of our topics need to address colonialism and nationalism. And then we think of the incredible voice that came out of Miramar, the woman who led not only the nation for a time, at great cost, by the way, but demonstrated this by starting the National Democracy Organization. And so history is in the making. It's being progressed. And the scriptures often in my own faith community talks about loving our neighbor. And often loving our neighbor can be looking at humanitarian aid, looking at conflict. But I believe that as we've loved our neighbor through this conversation, it has gone far beyond humanitarian aid, into the realm of human rights, into the realm of asking the next phrase of that scripture, who is my neighbor? And I'm encouraged by this webinar that we're asking those questions through research, through experience, through highlighting the voices of those who feel neighborless in some ways. And so our bridge into the future is understanding, yes, we want to shape the future, but also acknowledging that the future shapes us, as I've read those 1994 news bits. And I believe as well, taking from my own ordination body, the Salvation Army, they say that vision is not only about being able to see it, it is about where we choose to look. And I'm encouraged what we've chosen to look at in the last 3 hours.
Thank you, Christine. So here we are. Those were really powerful words, Christine, and it might seem like we had collaborated when I move into the closing for our many hours together. I had the pleasure of opening up our time together today, and if you were here right at the beginning, we did some housekeeping. And those housekeeping agreements that we came to as a community really had a lot to do with appreciation, listening, collaboration. And those are very important. As the World YWCA, one of the most important things we know about achieving gender justice is creating very specific spaces so that dialogue can happen. But another thing that we talk about at the World YWCA is feminist or flat or horizontal or shared leadership principles. And that looks so good on paper, as does the ICPD aims and visions. And I'm really struck by the conversation today. It's so important that we do talk about love. We do talk about unity. We do talk about collaboration. We do talk about courage. But similar to these feminist leadership principles, the really hard part, I think, being part of these interfaith and multi-faith dialogues around gender justice for so long is the really difficult conversation. So often they do not happen. And if they do happen, sometimes a silence or a freeze is created that can last until there's a leadership change or a moment of inspiration or a profound epiphany by an individual who then overcomes that barrier. So my call to all of you before Diana closes us out is to really think about what does it look like within our scripture, within our family of origin norms, within our societal norms, within our laws and regulations as leaders, as those that care about gender justice, and particularly the aims of ICPD, how do we hold ourselves accountable to doing the part that's really difficult, not always so pleasant, and really has to demand that we explore unpleasantness. So that's my call. And I think with that, in the coming years, that as a community, we actually may make some profound leaps and great strides.
This has been the most rewarding morning here in New York, and from wherever you are, wherever you're sitting, I hope you take a moment to appreciate a couple of things that have happened during these hours. One, we've all gathered together for common purpose, for common commitment. We've heard about where we've been, we've heard where we are, and I am so hopeful for the future. Our young people, I think, are going to push us and take us to greater heights, using technology, taking resources, but most importantly, taking one another by the hand. We have so much opportunity. Faith, religion, teaching, sacred texts are wonderful when they connect us to our home community. But when we find those connections amongst the faiths, in those multi-faith spaces, we have so much more to gain. When we find that our texts, my text and your text, have shared common bonds, because we are one family, we are one community. And when we join hands, we can create so much more. Faith, religion can often be a resource or a roadblock. And in this sacred community that we have created today, in this gathering, we know faith is truly a resource. So I am hopeful, and I am full of joy, and I am full of energy, and I am really looking forward to the next 30 years of work that we're going to do together. And so if you haven't figured out how to connect with those you've heard on the panel who have inspired you today, please reach out. Thank you to the organizers who have worked so hard, diligently to bring this together, those who have been on screen and those who have been behind the screen and helping to make sure everything came together so seamlessly. We could not have done this without your vision, and your commitment, and your technology, and your tremendous patience. I hope to see you all at roundtables as we expand the tables. If you're not sure where the table is, call us, email us, and follow us online. Thank you all so much for being with us today, every day, and making this such a tremendous gift. And oh, yes, I just saw this in the chat, our ASL interpreters, thank you. That was a yeoman's job. Thank you all.